Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Corporate Vice President Soma.
Good morning. I'm very, very excited to be here today for the launch of Visual Studio 2013 and .NET 4.5.1. I do know that some of you have come from different parts of the world, but thank you to all of you for being here today with us to help us celebrate this momentous occasion. At the outset, I want to start off by saying a big thank you for an amazing year that we all have had. Okay? And let me explain to you why I say that. Okay? It's been a little over a year ago, in fact, last September, when we launched Visual Studio 2012. And in the time since then, we've seen over 6 million downloads of Visual Studio 2012. And that's by far the best uptake, adoption that we've seen by our customers of Visual Studio in the history of Visual Studio. So thank you. The other thing that we talked about last year at the launch was to say that, hey, we want to get to a world where we are running on a faster cadence. We want to be able to deliver value to you on an ongoing basis. And we've done just that in the last year with 3 updates to Visual Studio 2012, Update 1, 2, and 3. And in each of these updates, we had a bunch of bug fixes and product enhancements to make the product work better. But more importantly, we also added new functionality, new tools to target some of the newer platforms, as well as for things like agile development and the like. The interesting data point about these updates is that about 60% of our install base, existing install base of Visual Studio 2012 customers are already running the updates. And that, from my perspective, is a fantastic validation, both in terms of the frequency with which we are delivering updates, as well as the value that we are delivering in the updates. So I feel really good about that. And along those lines, I'm excited to say that we are releasing today Update 4 to Visual Studio 2012. So we strongly believe in this model of sort of delivering in a faster cadence, and we will continue doing that even for Visual Studio 2013 moving forward. Now, I can't talk about Visual Studio and not mention MSDN, because they go hand in hand. The volume of developer traffic coming to MSDN continues to be astounding. The last year, we've seen over 2.2 billion page views on MSDN. And when I look at MSDN, I think about it as a one-stop shop for developers to get access to information, resources, access to the latest and greatest platform technologies, so that you can build applications that take advantage and run on the latest platforms. So between Visual Studio and MSDN, we want to give you everything that you need as a developer to be able to build applications and deploy applications on the Microsoft platforms. Now let me take a step back and talk a little bit about hey, what I see around us in the world of software development, to set the stage for the products and the technologies that we are going to talk about in the rest of the keynote. It's a given at this point in time that every company is a software company, no matter what they are doing. Every company understands that software is a core asset that they can use to help them do whatever they are doing in a much better way, and frankly, get them the kind of business advantage that every company, every business is aspiring for. We also know that the world is going through what I call, or what we at Microsoft call, a transformation of devices and services. On the one hand, more and more developers are flocking to the cloud. And the reason they do that is because the cloud has got some inherent advantages in terms of economics, in terms of agility, to help you get started in a more friction-free way than ever before. Okay? So developers are saying, hey, it's easy for me to get started. I don't need to worry about infrastructure. I don't need to worry about the other things. Let me go build my app. Let me go put it on the cloud. And instantaneously, I get access to my worldwide customer base. So that gives them an easier way to get started. On the other hand, most of us are more and more consuming applications, data, services through a variety of device form factors. Now, from our perspective, as much as it's exciting to see the devices and services transformation, The thing that is even more exciting is the fact that we think that the developer is at the center of this transformation. The developer is the one that's sort of thinking about, like, hey, how do I build a set of applications that run on devices that stay connected to the cloud, consume services, consume data, and really make the experience seamless as we all go from one device to the next without having to worry about, hey, where is our information, where are our applications, what is the latest thing that I worked on, which device did I work on. All of that is seamlessly handled by the system, by the devices that stay connected to the cloud, and the developer is the one who's making all of this happen. So that sort of gives us, like, a great view into, like, hey, if you're a software developer, your world is much better today than ever before. So with that as a context, let me talk a little bit about what we at Microsoft are doing. At Microsoft, we have a vision that we call Cloud OS. And when we talk about Cloud OS, what we really mean is, like, hey, this is our way of saying we want to deliver to you a unified, a holistic platform that lets you decide when you want to get to the cloud at a pace that works for you all. In some sense, we want to make sure that the choice is yours, whether you're thinking about a private cloud, whether you're thinking about public cloud, whether you're thinking about a partner cloud, or you're thinking about a hybrid cloud that is a combination of one or more of the above. And inside the Cloud OS construct or vision, we got 4 pillars or 4 themes that really support what we are trying to do with Cloud OS. First and foremost is what we call people-centric IT. With people bringing more and more of their personal devices into the work environment, we want to make sure that we enable secure access to both data and applications, no matter what device your employees have at any given point in time. We want to think about, like, hey, how to let you unlock the value of the data that you have in your business. It is very clear that there is only more data that gets generated in a business in the world today. And in fact, the amount of data that gets generated is increasing exponentially. And we want to make sure that we give you both a platform and a set of tools that enable you to unlock the value of the data, be able to get the right insights, and make the right business decisions. The third thing is we want to absolutely transform the data center. And when I say we want to transform the data center, what I mean by that is we want to make sure that infrastructure is no longer a bottleneck for you. Whatever your application needs, whether the needs increase or decrease, we want to automatically provision the right infrastructure for you so that the app can do whatever it needs to do in the most seamless way. And finally, we want to be able to deliver both a great platform and a great set of tools that go hand in hand with the platform for you to be able to build what we call modern applications. And when you think about, like, modern applications and how you can go build and deploy and make sure that the right things are happening with your modern applications, that is where Visual Studio and .NET come into play. With Visual Studio and .NET, we want to make sure that we give you an integrated end-to-end development environment, development experience for you to be able to build applications and run applications on the cloud, for you to be able to build applications that run on devices that stay connected to the services on the cloud, and really think about this connected devices, continuous services application pattern. In fact, if you go and talk to the professional developer community today and ask them what are they doing, what kind of applications they are building, what kind of platforms they are targeting, one thing that is becoming clear, and this is a growing trend, where more than 60% of the developer community today will tell you that, hey, I'm building an application that touches 3 or more platforms at any given point in time, usually one on the back end and one or more on the front end. So we really internalize that app pattern, and we want to make sure that Visual Studio and .NET gives you a single environment for you to be able to go build those applications and be able to deploy those applications. So with that context and backdrop, I'm here to announce the official launch of Visual Studio 2013 and .NET 4.5.1. I do want to take this opportunity and really thank the thousands of people at Microsoft that worked on these products for the last year or more than a year kind of thing now. And it's a great honor for me to be here on stage today to represent the work by these thousands of people in the company. So I want to say a big thank you to the teams at Microsoft. But equally importantly, I also want to thank all of you, our customers and our partners who've been with us through the journey of Visual Studio 2013 and .NET 4.5.1, giving us feedback, testing the product, building add-ons and additional things on top of Visual Studio, and really making Visual Studio a fantastic product and a fantastic ecosystem today. So thank you all for that. And when I talk about the partner ecosystem, one thing that I'm excited to say today is that we got 74 of our closest partners ready to ship hundreds of their products that run on Visual Studio 2013 today. And that sort of speaks volumes to the cooperation and the collaboration that we have with our partners and the bet that they are making on Visual Studio even as we launch Visual Studio. And so thank you all to our partners who've been with us every step of the way here. So with this, I want to take a pause now. I had a sort of a goal. Hey, when I do this keynote within the first 10 minutes, I want to be able to open up Visual Studio and not keep on rambling and rambling and rambling kind of thing, okay? So I want to take a pause here and invite Orville McDonald to come up here on stage. And he's going to give you a quick view into some of the new tools that are available in Visual Studio 2013. And more importantly, how seamless it's going to be for you to use Visual Studio 2013 and be able to build the next generation applications. Orville?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Today, I would like to show all of you why Visual Studio 2013 is the best way to create applications that span devices and services running in Windows Azure. To do that, I'm actually going to use a sample set of applications that we call My Company Suite, and we'll actually be using these applications throughout the entire keynote. The technologies that are used in these apps, we'll be talking about them throughout the day. But even more importantly is that you could actually go to the MSDN sample site and download these bits for yourself. So you could go and play with them and get familiar with the technology later on as well. So let's jump straight into it. You can see here that I have My Company Suite, but the app that I'm most interested in right now is my Visitors app. I can see a list of different people who I'm going to visit with. I could click on details. I could get information. And this looks good. But not only do I have my web app, I also have a Windows Store app as well. It uses the same data, has this nice fluid experience. And one of the cool things about Windows Store apps is many of them take advantage of asynchronous coding techniques behind the scenes. But asynchronous coding is not just good for web apps or for Windows Store apps. It's also good for web apps. So let's take a look at my solution and see what it's made of. So the first thing I'd like to highlight is that I actually have two clients. One of them is a Windows Store app. The other one's a Windows Phone app. We have the web app that we just finished looking at. And to handle a lot of my business logic as far as accessing data, I also have this data project here as well. So this looks good, but we all know that one of the issues when you're doing asynchronous coding is really around the debugging. How do you keep track of where your execution is and what's going on? Well, the great thing with Visual Studio 2013 is it includes some new capabilities that makes this a lot easier. So let's go check some of them out. So I've already enabled some breakpoints, so let's just go and enable those, and we'll go back to our Windows Store app, and let's just refresh the data access. Here we hit our first breakpoint. This will actually be the last line of synchronous execution that we will do. After this, we're actually going to make an asynchronous web services call out into Windows Azure. So let's continue on. We can see here that I hit my next breakpoint, and we're getting ready to So far, everything we're doing is on this Windows Store app that's running locally on my machine. And that's pretty cool. But the thing I'm really interested in is what's going on in my web service sitting out in Windows Azure. Many of you who have encountered this problem before are saying, well, there's nothing you can really do about it. But actually, there's something new that we added as part of the Windows Azure SDK 2.2, this ability to attach to a debugger. And by doing so, it actually forms the necessary connection between Visual Studio on my machine and Windows Azure, so that way I could do remote debugging. And when Scott comes out later today, he'll actually talk a bit more about these type of scenarios. So let's go and continue executing my app. So actually, the first thing I want to call out before I move on is I want everyone to see that I'm not actually cheating. So you can see here, that I'm actually running my Windows Store app on my local machine called Yin. Now let's continue running it. And sometimes we have to authenticate just to make sure that everything's working the way it's supposed to. So here I've hit my first breakpoint. And the thing I want to call out here is that as I scroll up, you'll see that I have the API controller. So this shows that I'm using Web API. But even more importantly is the fact where before I was executing on Yin, you could see here that I'm actually now executing my web service on Windows Azure. So what you've seen is I've actually created a debugging experience that's actually distributed across the client and Windows Azure, yet I still have a local debugging experience all within Visual Studio 2013. Isn't that pretty amazing? That's awesome stuff, right? But the thing that's even better is that that's not even the end of it. So if I continue to run this, what we actually see here at this breakpoint is that as part of Entity Framework 6, we've also added asynchronous capabilities to that as well. So now I have end-to-end asynchronous code all the way from my client right through to Windows Azure where I'm doing my queries. So this is actually pretty golden. And you would think that I'm done? Not quite yet. So there's actually one more thing. And as I continue to execute, we see that as I hit my call stack, we've actually updated our call stack as well to highlight the asynchronous execution. So not only do you get great async end-to-end, but you also get a great debugging experience throughout all of it as well. So my web service is up and running. Everything's looking good. What I'm really interested in is that when people come to visit me, that we're actually able to take their picture so that way they could sign in themselves. And I want to do this actually running on my Surface Pro that I keep with the receptionist. But one problem we often get with applications is that those that tend to be CPU intensive tend to drain the battery. And that ends up in a poor experience. What I really want to know is, what's the energy characteristics of my application so that way it could be a good citizen on the device. So if you take a look here at my Surface Pro, you see within our Performance and Diagnostics Hub, I actually have an option to analyze energy consumption. So let's just go and kick that off. And what it's going to do now is actually going to launch my app. So we can see it's here. So because this is a security app, I want to stop smiling. I want to be serious for this one. So let's go into serious mode. Am I serious enough? Apparently, I'm not serious enough, so let's try that again. Okay. Good. So it looks like I've engaged in full seriousness. So now as you look at my app, you see this skull that's rotating. And many of you might think that it's a GIF or some type of video file. Well, it's actually C++ rendering it live. And you could also see that I have the video here while I was doing the face detection. There's my picture on the skull. It finishes the retina scan. And access has been granted. It's good to know I still have my job. So this is awesome. But we're not finished yet. We're going to go back to our energy consumption analyzer. And let's just stop that. And what Visual Studio is doing now is it's collected all this data, and it analyzes it, and it synthesizes it in a way that it gives me this nice, clean report. And I could tell running this application that it would actually run for 5 hours before it completely drains the battery. So for these reasons and many more, you can see that we've included great capabilities in Visual Studio 2013, so that way you could create great applications that span not just your devices, but all the way through to your services running in Windows Azure. Thank you, and let's bring Soma back out.
Thanks, Orville. And Orville got a chance to show you. So he showed a little bit of what Visual Studio 2013 is all about. And you're probably going to hear this from me at least like 10 different times today about what a fantastic product Visual Studio 2013 is. Okay? But for all the things that you're going to see in Visual Studio 2013 today, to me, that's just the beginning. If you look at the journey that we've gone through in Visual Studio, we started off many years ago saying that, hey, we want to deliver a set of client-side tools for you in Visual Studio. And then somewhere along the journey, we said, hey, maybe we can do some server-side functionality in Team Foundation Server to give you some additional team collaboration capabilities. And today, we are taking the next huge step forward and saying that we are going to deliver a set of end-to-end finished developer services on the cloud that work hand in hand with Visual Studio to give you a full experience, an end-to-end integrated experience for you to be able to build applications that run on the cloud, applications that run on the devices, and do everything that you need to do in this modern world. So that's really what we are going to be talking about today. And in that context, I'm very thrilled to announce something new today that we are calling Visual Studio Online. Now, Visual Studio Online, the way you want to think about it is, it's a set of finished developer services that runs on Windows Azure. And these services extend the capabilities of Visual Studio. The tagline that comes to my mind when I think about Visual Studio Online is any team, any app. You may be a single developer. You may be a developer working in a small development team, or you may be a developer working in a large development team in an enterprise context. No matter who you are, Visual Studio Online gives you a great set of capabilities that go hand in hand with Visual Studio. You may be building an app for the Microsoft ecosystem, or you may be building an app for a non-Microsoft ecosystem. So no matter what app you're building, we think Visual Studio Online gives you a great set of capabilities for your project, for your application. So Visual Studio Online, another way to think about it is, we are using this opportunity to take team collaboration to the cloud so that we dramatically reduce the friction for you as a software team to be able to get access to the team collaboration capabilities. In today's world, the developer's life is more interesting. They don't just think about, hey, what it means for me to build an app. They have an idea, they want to go write some code, they want to debug that code, they want to test that code, they want to get the app done. But once the app is done, they then want to think about what it means to deploy the app. And once the app is deployed, they want to be able to monitor the app. And then they want to get insights from the app in terms of how well it is running or how well it is performing. They want to collect a set of actionable data and then use that actionable data to go back and improve the application. And they want to be able to do all of this in a highly agile way. Visual Studio Online gives you a set of end-to-end services that helps you do all of these and more. So the Visual Studio Online is available starting today. Later today, you should be able to go up to visualstudio.com, be able to sign in, and get started with Visual Studio Online. To help people get started in a friction-free way, we do have a free version of Visual Studio Online or a free plan in Visual Studio Online for teams of up to 5 users. Also, if you're an MSDN subscriber, you get access to all of the Visual Studio Online capabilities as part of your MSDN subscription benefits. If you're not an MSDN subscriber and you have a team of greater than 5 people, or you want access to some of the advanced capabilities in Visual Studio Online, we do have a cloud subscription offer for you. And as I mentioned before, you can go up later today and sign in and get access to Visual Studio Online. And so what I thought I'll do now is show you a little bit of what Visual Studio Online is all about. You're going to hear a ton more about Visual Studio Online throughout the rest of the keynote, but I thought I'll get started with just a couple things here. So here, is it up here? Yeah, great. So you're here on the visualstudio.com homepage. There's a bunch of information, like I talked about any app, any team. Hey, you want to think about agile development, you can do that. And here you see better with Visual Studio Online. So let's click here to see what it's all about. You get to the Visual Studio Online homepage, and it gives you all information about the different kinds of plans, the different kind of capabilities, and how easy it is for you to get started. And as you can see here, there is a hey, get started for free here. If you want to get started with the free plan, all you need to do is be able to sign in with your Microsoft ID, get an account, and then you're up and running. So rather than creating a new account here, I thought I'll use one of the existing accounts that I have in Visual Studio Online. This is an existing account that I already have, and we use this account for all the projects that we did as demos that we are going to show you in the rest of the keynote here. And this is like one of the projects that Orville just showed you, the visitors app that he showed you. This is the project for that. The thing that is interesting to see here is when you come to this page, the project page, you get access to all of the key information that you need, that you want to know about the status of your project on an ongoing basis. Things like, hey, what does the burn down data look like for your current sprint? What is your work item backlog looking like? Now, what is the status of bugs? what is the status of your builds looking like, which builds are passing, which builds are failing. Things that you would want to know as a member of the team for the status of your project, you get right here. And then if you go up here on the tabs, you see hey, you can get access to the source code. And as you know, we do support both the Git protocol as well as the Team Foundation version control protocol. You want to see change set information, you can get it here. You want to go up to the work item list and see what are the work items assigned to you or to other members of your team. You can get it right here. You want to go get a build started or check on the status of the build, you can do it here. Or if you want to do some web test case management, you can do it here. For those of you who are familiar with Team Foundation Service, you will notice that hey, we are evolving Team Foundation Service and making that a core part of Visual Studio Online. Now, if you want to open up your project in Visual Studio, you can do that right here. So just open it up, and boom, you get your project open up in Visual Studio, and you can start working on your project. Now, I already have Visual Studio opened up here, so let me go here. The first thing you would notice is, hey, I'm connected up to Visual Studio Online. And because I have connected up to Visual Studio Online, I have access to the source code for this project. I've been able to map and get a copy of the source code locally to my machine. And because I'm connected to Visual Studio Online, I can also go look into my account settings. And if you can see here, I've got I'm an MSDN subscriber, so all I need is my MSDN subscription ID for me to stay connected with Visual Studio Online and get access to all of these capabilities. On the other hand, if I'm not an MSDN subscriber, or if I just have a product ID, which is the Visual Studio product ID, I can use that as well to get access to Visual Studio Online. So you can do it either way, but if you're an MSDN subscriber, you get all of it for free, as I mentioned before. Now, one of the advantages that we have with Visual Studio Online is, because I'm now staying connected to something on the back end, my settings can roam with me automatically. Now, if you are sort of used to Visual Studio in the past, you would know that hey, developers spend a lot of time customizing their environment, but then if they go to a different machine, life is a little harder because hey, it's a new environment, all the customization that you have done doesn't roam with you automatically. Now, because we are connected to something on the back end, we make it easy to roam your settings with you. So let me show you how that works. So I got here 2 instances of Visual Studio up and running. Okay? And you should, for demo purposes, I'm doing it on the same machine, but think it is running on 2 different machines kind of thing. And if I go up to Tools here, let me close this tab first here. And then if I go up to Tools here, Options, you see that my color theme is set to the dark theme. Okay? So let's say I want a lighter theme of some kind, and let's say I'm excited about the blue theme. So I pick on the blue theme here, hit OK. Wow. No matter where I am logged into Visual Studio Online, which machine I'm using you get the settings roaming with you. I can do it hey, on this machine, go to my office, pick a different machine. My settings roam with me all the time. And all it needs to know is that I'm the guy who's logging into my Visual Studio Online account. So this is just one little thing that Visual Studio Online can do for you. Now, I just showed you a couple of things in Visual Studio, particularly as it relates to team collaboration and how your settings roam with you. There is a lot more in Visual Studio Online that you're going to have to just wait a little longer. In the next hour or so, we'll be able to talk to you about all of that. So one of the things that we started thinking about a couple years ago was, hey, when we started working on what kind of services we want to be delivering from the cloud. One of the things that we constantly sort of started talking among ourselves, and we started hearing from our customers is hey, does it make sense for you to think about delivering a development environment in the cloud, in the browser? And so we'd been sort of thinking about it for a while, and we got some people working on it for a while. And I'm very excited to say today that as part of Visual Studio Online, we are going to be delivering a new service that we call Visual Studio Online within Codes Monaco. And the reason it's within Codes is because it is still a code name. But what Visual Studio Online Monaco does, it gives you a lightweight development environment in the browser for a certain set of quick tasks that is highly complementary to Visual Studio. And in the first instance of the service that we are delivering today as a preview, you'll be able to work on Azure websites. Now, over time, We want to increase the footprint of this and be able to work on other kinds of Azure services, Azure mobile services and the like. But today, you can use Monaco to work on Azure websites. We have a guy called Eric Gama. I don't know how many of you here know him. He's sort of one of the industry leaders in developer tools. He's considered as one of the fathers of Eclipse. He's one of the gang of four that wrote the famous book on design patterns. And he's been working with us for the last couple of years as part of Microsoft, working and driving this Monaco project for us. I'm very excited to invite Eric up here on stage and have him show Monaco in action. Eric?
Thanks for the nice reminder, but I'm really here to talk about what my team has built in the last 20+ months. And I must say I'm really proud of it. As Thomas said, our goal was to build a lightweight development environment in the browser, and beyond that, it should also be fun to use. And I must say, for us, we have achieved this goal, because today, we are aggressive dog fooders, and we do most of our development using Monaco. Okay. Truth in advertising, when we do hardcore C# development, we still dive into Visual Studio, right? The bar is just too high for that. So let me show you, actually, what you can do with it. So you see here, if you watch the address bar, I'm in an Azure website, right? It's just a different endpoint. And once you're there, you can work on your code, live as you do. And what I'm doing right now, I'm editing the code of the visitor's web app that Orwell has just showed you a minute ago. So let me show you what this is, right? So first of all, this is the website. I can, of course, browse the website. I can navigate to the corresponding Azure dashboard. I have connected the website with Visual Studio Online, right, with a Git repository from there. And I have checked out some code in my website here, right? I'm now here on the master branch. I have some other branch here. What I do here, I work on a development website. I don't work in my production website because I don't want to disrupt its function, right? So what can Monaco do? You see here, it's kind of, you can explore your code, search. There is Git. I must say my team loves Git. And we love the Visual Studio Online support for Git that we get. So we're one of the first dog fooders of this service as well. And we really love it. And of course, you can run your code and so on. So let me do some coding with you. First of all, you see that we understand quite a bit of the code, right? So we understand kind of what functions you have in here, right? We can quickly navigate to stuff. We understand kind of the structure of your code. We can understand where something is coming from, right? We hover over it. We get details about it. Let's see. I'm curious about this open link thing, right? So what is this? I can just peek into it, right? So this is kind of this peek experience that we worked on with the Visual Studio team. And we really love it, right? In-context information. Of course, you want to go on. Even in a peaked experience, you can still edit, right? Even in the peaked experience, you get validation. And we really like this in-context information so much, so we even do it here, right? When I want to see more details of the error, I can just navigate to it, and again, in place, I get in-contextual information about it. OK, so that much about some reading. I have to also make some changes, right? So let's say I want to rename this parameter. We understand the code behind it. So we see now I just press rename. Multiple cursors light up. And I can change this function parameter in an easy way. So what's actually behind all that? Behind all that, actually, even though we edit JavaScript, we leverage TypeScript, right? So another love relationship is TypeScript for us. So actually, we love TypeScript so much that we decided we implement Monaco all in TypeScript. Right? So it's about 200,000 lines of TypeScript code today. So we also leverage TypeScript for validation, right? When I type here some error or whatever, TypeScript will do the validation for me, right? So I will not only get IntelliSense from TypeScript, I also get validation. We also leverage TypeScript for IntelliSense, right? With TypeScript, you can describe the types of a JavaScript library. And there are lots of these typings available. And we leverage them as well. So when you do, here's a knockout expression, when you do IntelliSense, right, we understand the knockout library and the structure. Or I guess you all know jQuery, right? When I do quickly jQuery, Ajax, what is it? Oops, there it takes an object, right, which is a URL, colon, and you see kind of I get parameter information and all this stuff. So I can feel really cozy as I develop in the browser because I get all these aids. Okay, so since I'm at it, let's show quickly something else. I can also do some CSS stuff, and I show you some other love we have, which is side-by-side editing. Let me do some CSS stuff. And in this case, I want to do it open up on the side, right? Because often when you do web stuff, you want to see JavaScript, you want to see CSS all at once, and you can easily do that. On the side, right, you can also rearrange things as you like. Actually, what you also don't see me do here, you don't see me save, right? You have a saveless model, which we also love. So yet another love relationship. So in CSS, it's the same story. You want to give you a good feeling. You get IntelliSense. You get some other nice stuff, which you call in-place, replace, right? You can just toggle through colors, and so on. So let's assume I have done enough tweaking. I just do my F5 experience. I press run. I get an output window, which shows me the output from the running website, and I can see when everything is good or not good. Okay, so let's assume I'm good with my changes. My changes are now in the website, right? So now I have to get it in my VS Online code repository. To do that, we have the Git View-Lit, which tracks the changes here. Let's make some room here. And you see, I can now see the changes I did. I can review them, still tweak them. And actually, no, this reminds me, I can edit, of course, as I review the changes. This reminds me that I should do a to-do here. Since someone mentioned the Gang of 4, there's a good template, pattern, method opportunity here. Right? Actually, maybe to-do is a little bit too strong, right? Let's make it as a maybe. Right? Maybe do it. Okay, so now I can commit the change. Right? I know I got a task assigned, so I say, OK, I'm done with task number 17. I can check in the changes. They're then still in my local repository. What I need to do next is I can push it to the VS Online repository. You see now I have one outgoing change, which I will not do right now. But then I would push it to the VS Online repository, or I will push it to my production website, right? Which I can do all from the online experience, right? So what you have seen is really left on an end-to-end story. I got my code, loaded in, made changes with confidence, with pleasure, check them in and make them available back to the team and push them to production. So since I'm out of time, I want to continue some code tweaking while I'm here, and I'm doing this on this Android tablet, because we run in any modern browser. Okay, so this on the Android tablet, we just run inside Chrome, and of course we have touch support, and I can continue my code reviewing in here. So when you go home, try it out. So it's just one configuration switch on your Azure website to enable editing. We have videos that show you how to do PHP, how to do node development, right? Consistent with Azure. We support all these platforms, and give it a try. And if you like it, send us a smile. If you don't like it, send us a frown. But we really like to get your feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. And as Eric showed you, because it is a browser-based development environment, it runs on any browser and on any device. And also, Visual Studio Online Monaco connects up to the rest of the Visual Studio Online services, so that all of your source code artifacts that you can access from Visual Studio, you can also access and be able to take advantage of those services from Monaco as well. As I mentioned before, Monaco is a complementary environment to Visual Studio for a certain set of quick tasks that you want to get done in a lightweight way. So moving forward, we talk a lot about hey, devices and services and how developers are more and more getting to the cloud. With Windows Azure, we have a fantastic cloud platform, and one that is getting better every day that goes by. We are constantly enhancing and hardening and doing all kinds of fun things on the platform to give you the best cloud platform. With Visual Studio 2013 and Visual Studio Online, we got a fantastic set of tools. And if you put these together and add MSDN to the mix, where you got access to dev test capabilities as well as resources and information that you need to make you successful, with these three things, we feel we have the best platform and tools for you to be able to build for the cloud and deploy your application on the cloud. And over the last couple years, we've been working closely between the Visual Studio team and the Windows Azure team to make sure that both the platform and the tools are coming along in a hand-to-hand way or in a step-by-step way for you to get that best experience. And I thought it would be awesome to have Scott Guthrie from the Windows Azure team to come up here on stage and share with you some of the great work that we are doing together in the Windows Azure team and Visual Studio, and how that enables you to build applications for the cloud and deploy them in a friction-free, seamless way. Scott?
Thanks
Welcome.
so much. It's great to be here, and looking forward to spending a few minutes talking about some of the great work we've done between Visual Studio 2013 and Windows Azure that we think really is going to enable you to build applications faster, easier, and better than ever before. Windows Azure is Microsoft's cloud computing platform, and it enables you to leverage hundreds of thousands of servers that we have distributed around the world in Microsoft-managed data centers. You might say, well, why is that interesting? Well, fundamentally, it enables you to move at a much faster pace and gives you, your organizations or your companies much more agility to deliver business results faster by allowing you to leverage infrastructure that's already deployed and be able to spin it up and spin it down whenever you need it. This enables your teams, the development teams, to do dev test better and faster. It's all built on top of a very flexible and consistent environment that allows you to build any type of app, whether it's web apps, mobile apps, big data, media streaming, etc. And it's designed with a consistency promise that enables you to use the same skills that you know today with .NET and Visual Studio. And you can basically build in the cloud and deploy in the cloud, or you can also build in the cloud and still deploy in an on-premises environment, or you can take an on-premises environment and link it to the cloud. And that combination really is quite unique and enables you to kind of pretty much build any type of solution. And at the end of the day, it really allows you to save a lot of money. Because with the cloud, you only pay for what you use, you can now spin up and spin down resources to match your exact needs. You pay by the minute with Azure, and so if you only need certain resources on certain days or certain hours of those days, you can run them, and you can easily turn them off when you don't need them anymore. As I mentioned, we now have Windows Azure deployed in data centers around the world. And this means basically when you start a project inside Visual Studio 2013, you can choose whichever of these regions around the world you wish to deploy it to, whether it's the ones that's closest to your dev team or the one that's closest to your customers. And we're seeing kind of tremendous adoption with Windows Azure the last few months and over the last year in particular. More than 53% of the Fortune 500 are now already using Windows Azure, and we're signing up more than 1,000 new customers per day. And as you can see here, our kind of usage has just sort of skyrocketed over the last few months. And what you're really going to see with Visual Studio 2013, as well as all the releases that are coming out this week, is us kind of enabling you to use Windows Azure in a much deeper way for your dev teams. You can do it in a variety of different ways. You can use it for dev test. It's probably the easiest way for you now to spin up a dev test environment. Again, whether you're building that app to run in the cloud or even just run it in your on-premises environment. You can use it to build web and mobile apps. You can go ahead and extend your existing apps to the cloud as well with it. And what's nice is if you're an MSDN customer, you get, as part of your MSDN subscription now, a number of what we call free credits for Windows Azure. And what this means now is basically you can take a certain number of dollars of usage each month. All of your subscribers to MSDN can basically use on Windows Azure for dev test. And you can use it on any type of resource within Windows Azure. So for example, you're an MSDN Premium customer. You get $100 every single month per every single one of your subscriptions. And you could use it for a variety of things. So just one subscription alone, you could use to spin up 3 virtual machines for 16 hours a day, 31 days of the month. You could spin up 80 VMs for a 20-hour load test. You could go ahead and spin up to 500 websites and use them against SQL databases. All that's included as part of your MSDN subscription, and it's really easy now with Visual Studio 2013 to basically connect to the cloud and take advantage of that. What I thought I'd do is actually just show off a quick little demo here of some of the things that are available for you to start doing today. So what you're seeing here is our Windows Azure Management Portal. And this is a browser-based HTML portal that you can use to kind of see and manage all of the resources that you have within Windows Azure. One of the things you might notice here with this portal is I'm signed in using an account here, which is Scott Gu at mycompany.demos.com. Now, Windows Azure has always historically actually supported using what's called Microsoft accounts, which are kind of individual user accounts to sign in and manage your resources. One of the things that we've done over the last few months is also integrated the ability for you to use your Active Directory accounts as well that you already have on premises. And so in this case here, I'm actually logged in using an Active Directory account, and I can basically use all the same resources that I can use today. Basically what it allows me to do then is, and for anyone on my team to do, is basically log in, again, using the same username password that we use on premises, which gives us kind of great enterprise access control. And it also means if we ever leave the organization, our account is disabled and all of our access to the code and the content inside the cloud gets disabled as well. So it's a really nice enterprise security story. What's nice also today is, starting today, is I can now use my MSDN credits with my Active Directory-based accounts. And so it's now possible to link your Active Directory accounts to your MSDN benefits, sign into Windows Azure, and you can now take advantage of those free credits on a per-user basis for all of your enterprise users. And directly at the top of the portal, you can click that little thing, and it just shows you how many credits are remaining for the month. And so you always know what you're spending it on, how much is remaining, and who's using what. So let's go ahead and take advantage and use some of these credits. And I'm just going to go ahead inside Visual Studio here and spin up a virtual machine. And so it's really easy to create a virtual machine. I can use the Quick Create wizard, where we have a nice from gallery image that shows us a whole bunch of pre-built images that we provide within Azure. So I can install a vanilla Windows Server image or one that has SQL or SharePoint or BizTalk already installed. One of the things you'll notice that we recently went live with also is a Visual Studio tab inside the portal, which allows me to spin up a virtual machine that has Visual Studio 2013 already installed within it. This is probably the fastest and easiest way to get going with Visual Studio. I can just go ahead and create Scott Gu test 6 or 7. I've never done this demo before. And I can go ahead and just give it a username and password. Click Next to choose where in the world I want to deploy it. And literally within seconds here now, I'm spinning up a new virtual machine. And in about 4 minutes now, I'll have my own virtual machine with Windows Server and Visual Studio 2013 already installed on it that I can now go ahead and use for development. So it's really easy to spin up and start using and trying out VS 2013 immediately. Now, everything we've done so far is inside the Azure portal. Let's actually flip into Visual Studio now and actually show off some of the great VS 2013 integration that we've added for Windows Azure as well. And one of the things you might notice here that's new with this release is a Windows Azure tab or a node inside the Server Explorer inside Visual Studio. And what this does is it allows me to see all of the resources that I have inside the cloud. And we've made it really easy with VS 2013 to just right-click and say Connect to Windows Azure. This now prompts me for my Active Directory credentials to log into Windows Azure. So I can use my same enterprise security credentials. And I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And once I do that, you'll see that Visual Studio automatically refreshes the Server Explorer. And you can see my virtual machines and all of my other Azure resources now show up directly inside that Server Explorer. Again, all using my Active Directory credentials. And you can see that new VM we just started spinning up. It's already there and it's starting booting. And I can also see a couple of other virtual machines that we created earlier. And so if I want to, I could go ahead, for example, and just right-click now inside Visual Studio, connect to this virtual machine. And literally within seconds, I'm now logged in to a virtual machine running inside Windows Azure directly from VS. What's cool about this is, so I can close it, I can keep this virtual machine running as long as I want, so I can use my free MSDN credits for that. I can also, though, directly inside VS, just right-click and shut it down or restart it. And this is really useful because you only pay for what you use inside Windows Azure. Because I'm using MSDN credits, I'm not even having to pay, but the credits are only applied when you're using them. So I could actually at night shut down this virtual machine if I'm not using it, or on the weekend, and in the morning spin it up. And overnight I'm not paying for anything while it's shut down. And so this ability to kind of spin up and spin down resources only when you need it ends up being really powerful and can save you a lot of money over what you might otherwise need for your dev test environments today. Now, I'm connecting to this virtual machine. I created this virtual machine, and I'm connecting it over the public internet. And this is the standard way when you spin up a VM. We give you an IP address in the cloud, and you can go ahead and connect to it. Now, a lot of enterprise customers, though, say, gosh, I'm not completely comfortable with the idea, though, still of going through the internet and connecting to this virtual machine with a public IP address. You know, I'd rather be kind of a private network, and I'd feel more secure if that was, if it was possible to do that. And one of the things that we've added with Windows Azure the last few months is that private networking capability. And what this means is you can actually create a virtual private network and a virtual private cloud inside Windows Azure that only your machines can join, and which you can make sure that no one else outside of that network can connect with. And then you can optionally take that network and connect it to your on-premises environment. And that enables you to have a completely secure network end-to-end between your enterprise and between the cloud that only your code and your data can flow over. Setting that up is really easy. I just go inside the Windows Azure portal here and I can say new network. I have one here that's created a little bit earlier. What's nice when you create this network is you can specify any of the IP address ranges you want to use. And so if you zoom in here, you'll see I've actually specified a 10.0.1 local IP address range for these virtual machines. And I can basically map all these virtual machines onto them. And then what I can also do is specify optionally specify a gateway that I can use as my VPN endpoint so that I can connect my on-premise environment to the cloud in a completely secure way. And I can do that either by tunneling over the internet over an encrypted channel. We're also now allowing you, through a partnership with AT&T and Equinox, to set up private fiber to us as well, at which point you're the only one that's actually connecting on top of that fiber. And when I do that, then I can tunnel into this network with these machines and access them just like I would a machine down the hall inside my building. So how can we do this? Well, I could take a Cisco or Juniper router or some other hardware router and connect my entire network or some subset of my network to this thing. We also support the ability for developers to just VPN directly from their development machine. You can choose that on or not. And so what I'm actually going to show here is just how easy it is from any Windows machine or any desktop at all to basically go ahead and connect to this VNet. So I'm just going to use the standard Windows 8 support here. For clicking on the network, I can see I have a bunch of networks available. This is that VNet East that's running in Azure. I'm just going to go ahead and hit click connect, and in about 3 seconds, it's done. I'm now completely securely VPN'd in from this desktop to the cloud, and I'm now on a secure private network that only my traffic will flow over. And that's literally how easy it is to sort of connect and set up kind of an enterprise-grade security environment to these machines running in the cloud. And now that I do that, I can just go ahead and remotely desktop in to one of those VMs using this 10.0.1.4 IP address, which maps to that Travel East private VM that I have down there below. And again, literally in seconds, I'm now connected over a private network, again, using my enterprise security credentials, completely secure end-to-end across the system. So you might expect, obviously I could do server development inside Azure. One of the other things is because this is just a virtual machine, I can actually do any type of development I want within it. And so I just launched here a WPF application that's running inside this VM. You can see here, I can basically use the cloud even for client dev test and be able to kind of simulate and test out client-based applications. Now I can go one step further even, which is not only use this for testing the application, I can also now, within VS 2013, debug directly from the IDE into Windows Azure as well. And I can do this both for server apps as well as client apps. So for example, I can just go to the debug menu, I'm going to say attach to process. I can basically go ahead and type in, again, that 10.0.1.4 IP address, which means that no one else on the internet can access this machine, only I can. And not only can I now hit it, I can also go ahead, see the processes running within it, go ahead and hit attach. And I've now gone ahead and attached that WPF application directly from my ID here locally. You You can see here I've got a breakpoint set within this WPF app on that initialize data method. Let's flip back into the virtual machine. I'm going to hit refresh. And what you're going to see when I do that is we immediately pivot back into Visual Studio and my breakpoint's been hit. And I can now do F10 in order to actually step through the application inside Visual Studio. It's going back and forth showing me both. I can obviously have a separate monitor so I can see them both in real time. And I can even actually see full symbol information, debug, do edit, continue completely inside Visual Studio with this client application running inside Windows Azure. Again, all this is going over a private secure network. I'm using my enterprise credentials to do it. And the beauty is, using those MSDN credits, I don't actually have to pay for anything. All of these resources, the virtual machines, the networking, the gateway, all that stuff is covered by my MSDN benefits. And so if you're an MSDN subscriber, you can start doing everything I just showed here today and start taking advantage of it immediately. And getting started with those MSDN benefits is super easy. As I mentioned, every MSDN subscription now gets those benefits and those credits. You can basically not only take advantage of the free credits, but you can also take advantage of heavily discounted rates that we offer for any virtual machines or other resources that you run inside Windows Azure. So we actually support up to 97% off of the standard rates when you're using those VMs for dev test scenarios. And you can literally spin up thousands of those VMs taking advantage of that heavily discounted rate. And it's the cheapest, most cost-effective way to spin up dev test resources. It's far less expensive than, say, Amazon or Rackspace or other cloud providers. And with the benefits that you get included, in many cases, it's actually available completely for free. And what's also nice is you can now sign up to Windows Azure without needing a credit card if you're an MSDN subscriber. And you can take advantage of that both with your Microsoft accounts now, as well as starting today. You can take advantage of this using your Active Directory-based organizational accounts as well. And so starting today, you can go into the MSDN portal. You can associate your MSDN benefits with your existing enterprise Active Directory credentials, federate that with Windows Azure, which is a, yep. You can then go ahead and federate your Active Directory with Windows Azure very easily. And once you do that, all your developers can sign in using their existing enterprise credentials. They can sign into Visual Studio using their enterprise credentials connecting to the cloud. And you can have a completely secure enterprise-grade dev test environment up and running literally in minutes. So this is sort of a quick kind of overview in terms of some of the things you can do with Windows Azure and Visual Studio 2013 with the cloud and for dev test scenarios. Obviously, with Windows Azure, you can go much more than just dev test. You can do web, you can do mobile, you can do big data, you can do media, and a whole bunch more. And what I'd like to do is invite Scott Hanselman out on stage to show off some of the great improvements we're making with Visual Studio 2013 and ASP.NET for web development, and also talk about how you can integrate that with Windows Azure. So here's Scott Hanselman.
Hi, friends. How are you? Woohoo! So I'm going to talk about a couple of cool things that we're doing around Visual Studio 2013, ASP.NET, and web development, including a few things that go a little bit beyond the web. One of the things I do want to point out is you may have noticed that Visual Studio doesn't ship as fast as the internet ships. And because of that, Visual Studio has been doing continuous regular updates. We've got some really cool updates inside of Visual Studio 2012. And you're going to see additional innovations and things that are going on inside of 2013 beyond the launch today. And if you really want to live on the cutting edge, you can go up to vswebessentials.com and check out our bleeding edge kind of labs tools to see what we're doing every few weeks and some of the neat things that are going on inside of Visual Studio and web tools. And also, of course, our commitment to open source. ASP.NET has been largely open sourced, and Web Essentials is also open source. So be sure to check that out as well. The other thing I want to point out is our commitment to one ASP.NET, this idea that there's no longer just an MVC project type, and it's different from web forms. ASP.NET is ASP.NET, whether it be web pages and SignalR or Web API and MVC, or more specifically, something that you've done, some open source web services project that you prefer, or a data access technique that you would like. We want to make sure that open source projects are able to kind of compete on a level playing field. So when you say file new project and make an ASP.NET project, you can have choice, because it's all about choice. So let's take a look at VS 2013 here, and we'll switch over. So I'm having trouble with my switchy thing here. That's the technical term for this switchy thing. Maybe my friends in the back will tell me what to do because I've got no clicking. Let's try this. There we go. Got my KVM working again. So if I say File, New Project, and go to Web here, you'll notice that there's just one ASP.NET web application. When we click on that, we have some templates to build in, and there's some white space that I hope that the community will start to fill up with their own project types. I can pick a base project like MVC, but core references like Web Forms and Web API can be added easily. I can add them after the fact. The idea that a hybrid application is somehow not okay is no longer the case. It's okay to mix and match. In fact, it's encouraged. We've made it even more modular than before. We've also got a completely rewritten authentication scheme that allows for things like individual user accounts with Facebook and Twitter, Google, and Microsoft IDs. But we've also got organizational accounts that we saw Scott talk about. The idea that I could authenticate against Active Directory or Azure Active Directory. Like for the demos that we're doing everything with, I think it's mycompanydemos.com, and that's going to be our sign-on. This is all modular, and you can plug in your own stuff as well. So I'll go and hit OK here, and we're going to bring in a lot of these things with NuGet. NuGet is our open source package management system. This will just be the kind of default application, but in 2013 now, we give you some more guidance. We've got a commitment to great samples and tutorials up on the ASP.NET website, and you can get to those things directly from within your Hello World. So off the bat, we're not leaving you all alone. You can click on these and go check out some of our tutorials and videos. Now, when I run this application, I'm going to be using Twitter Bootstrap. We're shipping Bootstrap 3.0 as part of our default template, so ASP.NET developers will be able to use that. You get nice responsive design, so this will look nice on a mobile device or on a 30-inch monitor. And you can also get involved in the Bootstrap community and galleries, which is nice. Now let me switch to something that's a little bit more sophisticated than that Hello World example. This is the visitors app from my company that Orville talked a little bit about. We've got a couple of different projects that we split up here, but the idea is that we've got the website itself and the services that ASP.NET and Web API present. We've got some portable libraries I'll talk about later, various clients, and then different plugins for things like eventing. When I run this application, though, I want it to work on as many browsers as possible. I'm not just going to target one browser. So I go over here. I've got Internet Explorer as my default, but I can pull that down. I could pick Firefox and Chrome. I could click more emulators and actually install mobile emulators with the Opera Mini or an iPhone emulator. I could click Browse With and actually select multiple browsers and then set them as the default. So I could have multiple browsers set as default inside of Visual Studio. Here I'm going to say run Chrome and Internet Explorer at the same time. So I hit Browse, and we're going to launch both browsers simultaneously. Now we're talking to the same local web server with both of those browsers. And I'm going to go and hit the FAQ, because I'm still working on this particular site. And from within Visual Studio, I'll just hit Control Comma to use this new inline code searcher and go directly to the Bootstrap code. And this is using our now best-of-class CSS3 editor. And if I hover over rules here, you see with Visual Studio Web Essentials, we've actually extended that, and we can tell you specific CSS rules and what browsers they're supported on, and whether or not you should do other things. Like you see, I have a little warning there that says add a text shadow for vendor specifics. That's part of the extensibility in that new editor. Now I'm going to pull that off to the side here and snap that and go look at the index.cshtml for this FAQ. And there it is right there. And I can see here on line 24 I've got questions. Now I could go and make a change to that, hit save, go to each of the browsers. Maybe I'd have 4 or 5 browsers because I want to have a wide range, and then hit refresh, refresh, refresh on each one of those. But we're actually hosting SignalR, our real-time communication system. It's an open source component. We're hosting it inside Visual Studio itself, the technology called BrowserLink. You can actually see that Visual Studio knows that Chrome and Internet Explorer are connected right now. And that's interesting. But why? I can go and make a change and say questions and answers. and then hit refresh, and then we're actually pushing that refresh command from Visual Studio out into the browsers. That's okay. No, that's okay. That's cool, but that's just smattering of applause cool. That's just, okay, they pushed a refresh. We've seen that before. What would be deeply cool is to remember that what we've built here is a two-way freeway on open web technologies between any number of browsers and Visual Studio itself. So what if I came over here and then pushed Control, and then we injected HTML into the page itself? I hit Design, switching the browser itself into design mode, and as I move around, notice that we're sending commands back from the browser into Visual Studio, opening up the line of code that did that line right there. That would be cool. But still not cool enough. Because what if I could actually click in the browser itself and start editing, and as I'm typing, the code is changing in Visual Studio itself? That seems pretty cool. So now I say that I've got my application the way that I want it. I could go into Server Explorer and connect to Azure. And as Scott pointed out, you can just go and log into Azure using your credentials. There's no need to download any profiles or anything. And I'll just open up the Websites tab. You can see all the different websites that I'm working on. I'm working on quite a few, and I should probably stop working so hard. And the one that I'm focused on right now is this Comp Visitors Debug, my company Visitors Debug. I can right-click on my project, say Publish from within VS, and that's going to pop up the Publish dialog. And from within that dialog itself, I can actually make an Azure website if I wanted to. I could go up here, make a new, fresh Azure website. So if I don't want to visit the portal, I can do everything from here, whether it be shutting down VMs like Scott did, or creating, in fact, whole new websites and databases inside of VS itself. I could go also here and right-click, because I want to see my application running in production, and view the logs that are coming from ASP.NET's trace logging. So I'm going to say View Streaming Logs in production. And now I'm connected to Azure's log streaming service. I'm going to right-click on this guy and say Open in Browser. And now we're looking at the production version of the site. I'll then log in, authenticated against Windows Azure Active Directory. And this is showing the visits for my secure facility, people coming and going, and we're logging their visits. And as I move around, in this output window down here, we're seeing logs happening in real time. So for example, we see the line of code and that get visitors got called because we're using an ASP.NET Web API to talk to the back end. We're using JavaScript in this single page application to get services from the back end. So I could click on someone and edit them. And let's say that this young lady has changed her name just to AA. And I hit save and see that there was an error. So I want to figure out what's going on with that. Well, I can see that there was a trace log. Okay, name must be later than less than 3, so that makes sense. All right, so I'll take a look at that code. That's inside a visitors controller. So I'll go in here and say visitors controller. This is inside of the ASP.NET Web API, and I think it said line 82. There we go. So now I'm in the ASP.NET Web API in the back end, and I'm taking a look at what's going on. I'll put in maybe a breakpoint there because I want to see what's happening. That's a standard ASP.NET trace that was connected into the log service. Now, we saw when Orville had a Azure Cloud Service and attached a debugger, but we're happy to point out now that we can go attach debugger now with websites. So ASP.NET websites in Azure, you can connect to the production site with the debugger. This is basically IIS in the sky. And now, when I hit that again, I'm going to be able to have full debugging, live debugging, as if I was talking to any other IIS machine. We'll go and we'll edit her again. We'll try to hit that error one more time. Oops. There we go. We'll cause the error to happen one more time. That's going to pause. We're now broke, sitting on that line, and I've got full live debugging in Azure Web Sites. So now we've got parity between cloud services and websites, which is pretty sweet. Now that's ASP.NET Web API. That's a JSON API. That's a web service. The SignalR stuff that we saw earlier was kind of interesting. That's that real-time communication using things like WebSockets. We've got functionality like that as well. SignalR, of course, being open source. I'm going to take a look at the Visitors Notification Hub. I just used the camel casing there to go to Visitors Notification Hub. Here's the SignalR Hub that's going to notify connected clients when something has happened, like maybe a visitor changed their picture or their visit was added, and that's going to notify any connected client that that has occurred. This is the C# code on the server side that's going to do that. Now, we've got some JavaScript here on a client side inside of my website, and this is going to be notified. So if someone has arrived or their picture has changed, this JavaScript code is going to happen. So there's a collaboration and a real-time communication between the two. And this isn't just limited to the web. This is also limited. This also can be using connected clients. So .NET, WinForms, WPF, whatever makes you happy. So let's take a look at what that would look like. I'm going to go ahead and switch from here and go into the actual production visitors application. And we see we've got this guy, Joe Smith, freelancer, who has no face. And I'm going to click on Joe Smith and his faceless self. And let's say that the security guard down at the front desk has a Surface. So I'll step over here to the Surface. And I'm running a native application on the Surface. And this is the C# and XAML application that we've got. It's very surfacey. We've got the face here. The security guard sees Joe, and he clicks on his face and says change image. So he could take a picture of Joe as he visits. And take advantage of that lag. So now I'm going to hit OK. And you notice that SignalR then notifies all connected clients, in this case the website, that we just took this picture, that information has come across. And that's kind of cool. But it's not cool enough. Let's switch back over and see how we could make that cooler. Well, one of the things that would make that deeply cool would be to take advantage of these portable libraries. When you're creating a system that connects to as many clients as possible, you want to share as much code as possible. So you want to have libraries that are portable that can be shared as binaries between as many connected clients as possible. Because I may have a Surface and I may have a website, but I may also have something like a Droid or a Windows Store app or a Windows Phone app or iOS. You can see here that I've got the Xamarin tools installed, so I'm actually seeing my iOS client for visitors and my Droid client right alongside all of these other things integrated into Visual Studio. Even better, if I go File New Project, I can file New Project an iOS app, an Android app, a Windows Phone app. And the best part is that when I say Portable Class Library, we've extended this now, and Xamarin appears as an option inside of the Add Portable Class Library. So we're integrated now, where I can make binary shareable DLLs that can be brought, and I can have code sharing across things. So that would be really, really cool. But of course, they would never let me show that here. Quick, before they kick me out, I brought in an iPad Air and a Samsung. And I don't really have a kickstand for these. But I do have this piece of wood. And we've beveled this at a perfect 22 degrees. And I'm just going to put that here like that. And then I'm going to put the... There we go. So that's solid. Quick, before I'm getting all flushed because security is going to tackle me now. So now we'll do another change here. Because the first picture was really unflattering. And now when I hit OK, that's updated both of these items. And these are native apps written in C# running on an iPad and Android and a Surface and the website. C# end-to-end, cloud end-to-end, SignalR, open source. It's wonderful. It makes me happy. Thank you very much, and we'll see what Soma has to say about that.
We do love Scott, contrary to what he says sometimes. We do like him a lot. But as he showed, one of the things that we are hearing more and more from developers now is like, hey, as I build my mobile application, I want to extend the reach of my mobile application to a large number of devices. And we like always like say, hey, that's a great thing to do, and you pick the approach that works for you the best, right? If you are a web kind of person, you can say like, hey, I'll use ASP.NET on the back end, I'll use HTML5, JavaScript, and TypeScript more recently on the front end, and hey, I can get the broadest reach for my applications. And we got fantastic tooling support in Visual Studio for all of these things. But at the same time, we have a large .NET developer base. People who are sort of excited about C#, who use C#, who love C#, and they want to extend the reach of their mobile apps as well. And for the last year or so, we've been partnering very closely with one of our partners, Xamarin, to figure out like, hey, what can we do for the .NET developer community, for the C# developer, to be able to easily extend the reach of their mobile applications. And with that backdrop, I'm sort of excited to talk about the great collaboration that we've had with Xamarin in the past year, and a set of resulting things that are coming out today with the deep collaboration that we've had. So let me talk about the specifics of that. First and foremost, Xamarin is making available the next version of their product today, which uses portable class libraries. So in other words, if you're using C# and writing a .NET library, you can share that library not just with Windows devices, but also with other kinds of devices, including the ones that Scott showed you, right? iOS and Android. The other thing that we are working with Xamarin on is to make sure that their tools integrate very well with Visual Studio, so that you get the same experience that you're already used to in Visual Studio as you start working on Xamarin technology to be able to extend the reach of your mobile applications. That's on the technical side. On the business side, we are sort of working together on a set of things that makes it easy for you as an MSDN subscriber to be able to evaluate, to be able to get some training, and be able to use Xamarin. Specifically, if you're an MSDN subscriber, you get access to free training for Xamarin technologies starting today. And the other thing is, if you actually, like after evaluation, you decide like, hey, I want to really use this and I want to go buy some Xamarin licenses, working with Xamarin, we are offering a substantive discount on the Xamarin licenses as a part of your MSDN subscription benefit. So I sort of have worked closely with Nat over the past year, Nat from Xamarin, and I feel extremely good about what the two teams, the two companies have been able to do in the last year in terms of what we can do for the .NET developer community, people who want to continue using C# and be able to reach a wide variety of device platforms. So as much as we sort of think about like, how we extend the mobile app reach for other devices, Windows continues to be our flagship platform. And as always, we want to make sure that Visual Studio provides the best development environment, the best tools for you to build applications on the Windows platform. And starting with Windows 8, we sort of came out, and we've been talking about this now consistently for a little while, where we want to give the developers the choice of what programming model and what programming languages they want to use. So whether you're using .NET and C# or VB.NET, or you're using C++ to build a native app, or you're a standards-based web developer using HTML5 and JavaScript, we want to make sure that we have first-class tooling support in Visual Studio 2013 for all of these things. Now, you may be building an app for the desktop, Windows desktop. You may be building an app for the Windows App Store. Whatever environment you want to build on, we want to make sure that we support .NET, we want to support C++, and we want to support standards-based web technologies. And as you know, we timed the release of Visual Studio 2013 to happen hand in hand with Windows 8.1. So let me use this opportunity to get Orville back on stage here and show you more specifically what VS 2013 can do for you as it relates to building applications for Windows 8.1. Orville?
Thank you so much. Visual Studio 2013 includes great new capabilities for developers targeting Windows 8.1. And I'm actually going to start off by showing you the easiest of the capabilities right out the gate. You take your Windows Store app, version 8, right out. Let's bring that up. And the first thing you do is you actually retarget it for Windows 8.1 and compile it. Just by doing this, you get significant performance improvements for a variety of reasons. A few of them include the fact that we now take your XAML and we pre-compile it to a binary format. So that helps us parse it that much faster. Which is a cool thing. Yeah, feel free to clap. That's some cool stuff. A second thing that we're doing as well, and these are all things that have been surfaced within Windows 8.1. The second thing that we do for it as well is with a lot of the controls, we've actually optimized them now for better performance. So for example, if you're using list, we do a better job of handling a large number of items. But to be honest, this is just the beginning. Another thing that we're experimenting with right now is actually taking your .NET code and compiling it directly to native code. Isn't that pretty cool? That's some cool stuff, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to showcase that using our surfaces over here. Many of you might have used this technology without even realizing it. If you've used FreshPaint within Windows 8.1, it's actually a .NET app that takes advantage of this technology. So with these two surfaces, I have the first one on my left. This is FreshPaint without this new technology. On my right is FreshPaint with the new technology, and is also the one that's available within the Windows Store. So we're going to have a race between the two of them. Is everyone ready? You guys have your stopwatches ready? OK, let's do this. Ready, set, go. Oh, we got a false start. OK, so let's try this one more time. Sometimes these things are so fast, they just kind of jump the gun. All right, try this again. Ready, set, go. And you can see the one on my right loaded significantly faster. And the reason for this is that we don't do JIT. And another thing that we did as well is we took advantage of some of the compiler optimizations that we use for C++ code and applied it here as well. We're going to continue to test this technology and expand it across ARM devices and a wider variety of applications. And we expect to make this available for all of you to include in your projects in the future as well. So as far as great things we're doing for .NET developers, it's not actually limited only to performance optimizations. The other things we did is we make you a lot more productive when you're editing XAML. So for example, if I go back into Visual Studio, we have the Visitors Windows Store app that we were looking at earlier today. And here I set my data context. And for those of you who are curious, this is just your standard kind of model view model application. So I've set my data context. But what often happens at this point is I need to set the properties on my bindings. And this becomes really annoying because I got to remember them in my head and I got to look around. Well, we've actually included some new capabilities that makes this a lot easier. So in this case, I'm actually going to go and I'm going to pick on the visitor name. And I'll lift this up so it makes it a little easier for everybody to see. So let's just go and delete that. Right. So with it gone, I could actually add IntelliSense. And the IntelliSense is actually intelligent enough to know what are the different properties that are valid in this situation. I'm going to go and type visitor. And the one thing I want everyone to note is I've actually misspelt visitor. And then as I continue with name, you'll notice that it actually shows up. And that's because within the IntelliSense, we include things like fuzzy matching, camel casing, and other things. So that way, as I'm typing stuff, it still shows up. So that's pretty cool. But it's not limited to that either. You'll see here that for my button, I have start and end tags. And I will just go and delete that. You see that we get the match across both. And that applies in kind of a wider variety of stuff. So this is all looking really good. But the other issue that I often have, and let me just go and fix that up, is that sometimes I actually want to see the code behind these properties. And what I have to do is then I go in my search solution and I start searching all over my project. And that's really annoying. But one thing I could do is take advantage of go to definition. And this will actually bring me directly to the line of code where this is implemented. Once again, another productivity enhancement. But as you can tell, I tend to be pretty demanding when I code. And I want even more. So what I want to know is actually where this first name is defined. Once again, often I'd have to spend my time searching through the solution. Well, I could take advantage of a new feature called peak definition. And by selecting that, what it actually does is bring up an inline definition of where the code is defined. One thing I would like to highlight, if you look here, is you'll notice that I actually have my visitor file embedded within my visit items. So not having to open multiple windows, everything's handled in one place. So you can see some of the great things we've added. But we don't stop there. The XAML love doesn't stop at just Windows Store apps, but it also applies to WPF desktop apps as well. We see here that I have my form. I could click on name. It brings me directly to the control. And similar to what we saw with our Windows Store apps, I can once again go to the definition of things. I say I have this method. Let's just set a breakpoint and go run our application. It comes up. And because I'm reusing my XAML skills, I can still create these fast and fluid animated experiences that look really great. Let's select some new travel and collect name. The one thing I want to call out is that this is actually a 64-bit application that I'm just running here locally on my machine, and I'm going to go and make some changes to it. So I want to add some text that will appear when people go to use the application. And what should I type? Maybe VS Rocks, because this is actually pretty sweet. And we'll just go and continue to run that, and you see that VS Rocks shows up there. So one thing we've added as a result of the new capabilities in .NET 4.5.1 is the ability to do edit and continue with 64-bit applications. So you're seeing that in action right over here. And we don't limit the goodness to just desktop and Windows Store apps, but these also apply as well to your Windows Phone applications. So you can see that as you reuse your XAML skills, you could use them across Windows, across devices. But we know that Windows Store applications aren't just limited to your XAML skills. We're seeing a lot of web developers take the power of HTML and JavaScript and some of the great web experiences that they're developing and bringing that to the Windows Store. But in order to have those great experiences, what's often important is that your UI thread is free. That's how you have those nice, clean, animated experiences. Well, we've actually added an HTML UI responsiveness analyzer. And similar to what we saw with energy consumption, we could actually just go and run our applications and see what's going on. So I'm taking a look here and looking at the different expenses. So this is our expense application. I see Dimitri spent a lot of money on his hotel room. Wow, that was a lot of money. I think he took the presidential suite last night. But Dimitri's a nice guy. He's been helping me out a lot on this trip. So I'll just go and approve that, and hopefully my managers won't notice. So we'll go back. I continue to play my application. I could click on different things. But that's good enough. So what I want to do now is just stop collecting information. And what Visual Studio is doing is it's analyzing all the data, and it's synthesizing it in a way that makes it very easy for me to understand. You'll see over here that I have a list of different events for different things that were going on my UI thread. And as I go through and just select different ones, for example, the DOM event, I can actually see a breakdown of where the time is being spent while rendering my UI. So this helps me to choose where I want to make optimizations if I see them fit. But as I mentioned, people are bringing their web skills to Windows, but we want to make sure that when they're using these skills to develop web applications, that we still give them the best tools possible, especially since the style of development is converging. So if I go back to my travel application, this time I'm going to go to one that's running on the web. And we rebuilt our F12 developer tools from the ground up and included the same UI responsiveness tool that we use in Visual Studio in our F12 developer tools. So I'll just go and kick that one off. And I can just play with my application, click on different areas. Since we're in New York, I'll go and I'll zoom in there. So this is good enough. I'll stop it. And just like what we saw within Visual Studio, I get the same type of analysis, but this time it's more specific to something that would be showing up in a web browser. And you can see I could click on different events and still get the same breakdown. So really, all this stuff is just a start, right? So this is just to show that we've included a lot of great new capabilities for those of you who are writing .NET applications to be a lot more productive, or for those of you who are using your web skills to use the same tooling on both Windows Store apps and also on your web apps. And you might even remember earlier when we did the face detection that even for your C++ skills, they're transferable as well. So for all these reasons and many more, Visual Studio 2013 is the best way to create great experiences on Windows across all devices. Thank you, and let's bring Selma back out.
As Orville showed you, we have a great set of tools, new tools coming in Visual Studio 2013 for you to be able to target Windows 8.1. So far we showed you a little bit of, specifically about how you can use Visual Studio 2013 and Visual Studio Online to be able to build applications for Azure, deploy onto Azure, build applications for Windows 8.1. Now switching focus, I want to talk a little bit about what we are doing in Visual Studio 2013 for business applications. Today, if you talk to enterprise developers particularly and ask them hey, what are you looking for as you think about modernizing or building new business applications? Some things like, hey, I want to be able to integrate my social graph, or I want to be able to integrate my identity graph. Those are all things that every business application just expects to be able to do seamlessly. So what we thought we'll do in Visual Studio 2013, we'll introduce a new project type that we call Cloud Business Application Project Type. And what this does is it provides a great set of tools against both the rich set of services that we have in Windows Azure and the rich set of services that we have in Office 365, so that you can seamlessly wire up to those services from within your business application using Visual Studio 2013. So for us to be able to show you this, let me invite Jay Schmelzer from the team to come up here and tell you how this new project type in Visual Studio 2013 works and how easy it is for you to be able to build business applications. Now, sometimes people ask, hey, when I'm building a business application, I'm excited about a RAD experience. Give me a RAD experience. And then some other people will tell you, hey, RAD is great, but because it is RAD, it also has inherently a bunch of constraints. I want more control. I want to be able to fall back to the tool and write a bunch of code. So we've kept both this in mind, and we sort of created a tool and an experience that says, hey, for a set of common tasks in your business application, we provide a RAD experience, but at the same time, if you want to drop back to writing some code and having a higher level of control, we'll let you do that right within the Visual Studio environment. So let me get Jay here. Jay?
Thank you, Soma. For the purpose of this next demo, let's turn our attention to the My Company HR department and see how Visual Studio 2013 and the new Cloud Business App can help them build an application that enables all of the employees of the organization to constantly update and manage the information about the teams and projects they're working on. Now, the HR department is already using Office 365 and SharePoint to manage a lot of the content and facilitate the collaboration across their individual group. And this is a natural place for us to go and expose this new staff application that we're going to build. So let's get started doing that. In Visual Studio 2013, we'll start with the Cloud Business App project. Now, this project template provides us with a prescriptive solution approach to building a modern business application that solves the needs of these modern application requirements. So now, any business application really is made up of three core components. The first is data. In this case, we've already started defining a new SQL database structure that will contain the information about the teams, the projects, and the individuals that are working on those teams. For customers that have been using Visual Studio LightSwitch, you'll see a very familiar experience here because we're building on a lot of the core concepts and experience we introduced with that part of the product. One of the new things we've added as part of a Cloud Business App is the fact that we have new data types or new semantic business types available to us. In this case, we notice that the manager of the team is specified as type person. What this does is it surfaces a set of capabilities that are available in Windows, Azure, and Office 365, specifically information about the individual. In addition to just using and defining data inside of our SQL database, most business applications need to pull in data from somewhere else inside of the organization. Using our attached data source capability, we can go and pull in that information, whether it be in a relational database, available via a service exposed via OData, or something from SharePoint and Office 365. In our case, what we want to do is pull in a set of news information that the HR team manages in a custom SharePoint list. So by just choosing SharePoint and saying next, and then specifying the location of that list, we're able to pull that data source into our environment. You see, I've already done that, and I have it here. What we'll do now is take advantage of a really powerful capability that allows us to establish a relationship between these two different data sources. In this case, we'll say there's a relationship between the team information stored in our SQL Server database table and the team news information shared in our SharePoint lists. Okay, that takes care of our data model. Now we need to go on to the second part of a business app, and that's the user experience. Customers, users today expect a modern user experience. They want it to look good, they want it to feel good, and they also want it to have a level of consistency throughout the application. To accomplish that, what we do inside of the Cloud Business App is we present a set of UI patterns that are common for these types of applications. So whether you're browsing data or working with data. In our case, we want to create a screen that allows us to edit information about the team. So we'll use the add edit details pattern. Just give this a name, say edit team, and choose the primary data that we want to work with, in this case, the team, and say OK. Now Visual Studio is going to go and actually lay out that screen, that UI for us, based on the information from the design pattern, as well as the information from the underlying data source. All right, data model, UI, check. We've got those taken care of. The last thing we need to do is actually implement our custom logic. In this case, what we'll do is, again, take advantage of a set of prescriptive patterns that are available as part of the Cloud Business App. So when I look at the team, for example, we see the ability to go and insert code anywhere that data is moving in and out of the back-end data source, inserting, updating, and so forth. For our situation, we'll just go use a validate method, and I'll go ahead and add some code here that will allow us to reach into the Azure Active Directory information for the user, and we'll just do a simple check and say that the only people that are allowed to change team information are people that are part of the developer division. Let's go set a breakpoint on here so we can make sure it's working. OK, we've got the model for our application defined, so let's just go see what we've got. When I hit F5, Visual Studio is going to package up this application. It's going to send the manifest off to Office 365 and register it as part of our Office 365 developer site, and then launch the application for us. We can go into our Teams area here, see the list of teams. We'll drill into the developer division. And right away, we see that the team news that's coming from the SharePoint list is available, filtered just to what's specifically pertaining to this team that we're working with. When I go back to the details, over here on the right, you see I have an edit button that launches the edit details screen that we just created. If I go in and start to change the manager, and let's say I want to change this to Scott, what we'll see is that I'm getting a list of the individuals inside of my Office 365 and Azure Active Directory whose names begin with Scott. I didn't write that code. That just came as part of specifying that this is a person type within the system. So we'll say, Scott, let's go change the team maybe as well and put it in New York. Go ahead and hit save, and we see we've hit our breakpoint on our custom business logic. So we're getting that rich, familiar, local Visual Studio debugging experience when we're working with and building our Office 365 Cloud Business App. In this case, I am a member of the developer division, so let's go ahead and F5 and let this continue, and the save happens to our database. So that's pretty cool. But now I'm looking at the application, I'm realizing, we have team news filtered by the actual team, but we also had this news option over here that was just all of the news. We don't want that. That doesn't make as much sense. So let's remove this command from the home screen. I'll switch back over to Visual Studio, go into our home screen, just take that news command, and we'll just delete it. Save that change. And when I flip back over to the browser, you'll see we've refreshed and the command is gone. All right, not that interesting, except it's showing that we have that same consistent Visual Studio web developer experience that you're used to, even when working with these prescriptive Cloud Business App projects. OK, let's look at a few other things that are actually part of and we get for free as part of using this template. When I go back into the teams, let's go back into the developer division. We'll look at the employees. And one of the things that you'll notice here is that when we list the employees, we're attempting to get presence information for them. Let's make sure that we're actually logged into Link. We are. And you see that actually the presence information is fairly accurate. Most of the folks are gone. Looks like Jim is sort of available. From right here, we're seeing his presence. We're seeing the Link contact card information because we're grabbing that from Office 365. If I wanted to start collaborating with Jim right from within the application, I can do that. Again, I didn't write any of that. That's all part of the capabilities that come with that person data type that we used. We mentioned that we have to deal with multiple device form factors. But one of the things we've also done as part of this tablet, this application, is allow it to work in a very reactive UI experience. So as I change the browser side to reflect different form factors from maybe a desktop to a tablet, all the way down to a phone, we see that the UI is fluidly flowing itself and matching the best form factor for that device. OK, so we've seen a lot of what these patterns can do and what this prescriptive approach can do. But every business app I've ever seen has got some aspect that just cannot be implemented via those patterns. Whether it's a data source you need to work with, some really complex custom logic, or just a piece of UI that just doesn't fit those patterns. Well, in this case, one of the things that we were asked to do was when we look at the offices and we drill in, we wanted to show the details of the office positioned on a Bing map. And we also wanted to be able to show all of the other offices plotted on that map as well, just so people had a visual of where they were going. Now, this is not something you do with the pattern. But fortunately, because these client applications are just written with HTML and JavaScript, I can switch back over to Visual Studio, go into our View Offices map, and I can take control of the rendering of the UI. So in this case, I said I want this to be displayed via custom control, and that allows me to go in, and in the render method, just give me full control to write the JavaScript or an HTML that I need to have the UI display that I want, while still accessing all of the data that's coming in from that model. So what you've seen in this quick demo is how Visual Studio 2013 and the new Cloud Business App Project template allow us to productively build business applications that access data inside and outside of the organization, that enable people across the organization to communicate, connect, and collaborate right from within the applications, are available on multiple different device form factors and device platforms, and all of that within a Visual Studio experience that allows us to initially focus on just the unique aspects of the application we're creating, but still gives us the full power and flexibility of Visual Studio to go after the advanced needs of our application. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jay. So far what we've shown you is what you can do with Visual Studio 2013 to be able to take advantage of the latest and greatest platform features, whether it is Office, whether it is Azure, whether it is Windows. Now let's switch focus and talk a little bit about what we are doing in the application lifecycle management space. As I mentioned before, today the developer says, hey, I want to think about developing an application, but I don't want to stop with that. I want to think about deployment, I want to think about monitoring, I want to think about getting insights. In other words, what developers say they want to do is, hey, I want to be in an environment where I'm building things in an agile way, and when it comes time to deploying and delivering things, I want to be able to do agile application delivery. That's essentially what developers are wanting. And we've done a bunch of work in Visual Studio 2013 and Team Foundation Server 2013, working with the Windows Server guys and the System Center teams and saying, like, hey, how can we enable a set of DevOps scenarios between Visual Studio Team Foundation Server and Windows Server System Center for the on-premises world. And then with Visual Studio Online, as I mentioned before, we have a set of end-to-end services that enable developers to get through the full DevOps workflow. So far, we've shown you some cool things in Visual Studio Online, but there is more to come. So to get a chance to talk to you about that and to show you, let me invite Brian Harry, a technical fellow in Microsoft, to come up here on stage and tell you what we are doing with Visual Studio 2013, with Visual Studio Online, as it relates to application lifecycle management. Brian? Welcome.
Thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to talk to you all a little bit about what we've done in Visual Studio 2013 and TFS 2013 for application lifecycle management. So I suspect, like many of you, I've been in the software business a long time, over 20 years now. And the first thing that strikes me is how much it has changed from what it has been over the past 20 years. And that rate of change continues to just increase. It seems like every year it just gets faster and faster. And when I think about some of the problems that I'm challenged with today, I've listed a few of them up here, including things like I have much more diverse teams. If I think about my team, the Team Foundation Server team, we've got people spread all over the world. I've got like 5 locations in the US, 3 locations in Europe, India, Australia. And keeping all of those people sort of organized and coordinated and going in the same direction and on the same page is very challenging. Compare that to when your whole team is usually in one room, very different. The pace of change in sort of business has changed. The pace of change in technology has changed or increased. And that has required me to deliver software much more rapidly, to adapt to that change much more quickly. And that has required me to delegate more autonomy to the individual teams. I've got to empower each team to be able to run as quickly as they can. And we've seen sort of the advent of a lot of agile practices that help teams do that. And then, with the clouds especially, the necessity to deliver capabilities regularly to the customer into production has required a lot of change in how we actually deliver software. Used to shrink it up, stick it in a box, and ship it out, or go through very long sort of certification and approval processes. And now we ship every 3 weeks, and figuring out how to get that stuff into production every 3 weeks has been just a massive change in the way we have to work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've done and how that applies to some of these problems. So the centerpiece of our application lifecycle management solution is Team Foundation Server. So Team Foundation Server is a collaboration platform that includes sort of a full set of capabilities that your developers would need, regardless of whether they're Windows developers, Android developers, iOS developers, Java developers. It provides the capabilities that your development team is going to need. It also provides the capabilities that your analysts, your project managers, your release managers, all of the stuff the development team needs to be successful. And over the last couple of years, we've been on a journey to bring all of those experiences to the cloud. And in that process, we've not just done an exact translation of what's on premises to in the cloud, but we've taken advantage of the cloud. So we've been able to deliver new value like automated build services in the cloud or load test in the cloud that sort of relieves you of a lot of the burden of having to manage all of that and takes advantage of the elastic power of the cloud. And we've been doing this now for a couple of years, and I've kind of been watching the growth of the service and who's adopting it and why they're adopting it and what they like and what they don't like. And I've seen a few patterns that are interesting. One is, it seems to be a great place for small teams. Like, small teams don't want to deal with having to get IT to provision hardware. It takes months and approvals and all of that. They can just go up to the cloud, get started, and literally within 30 or 40 seconds be going and collaborating with people all over the world. Which brings me to the second pattern that I've seen is distributed teams. You've got the infrastructure, the networking, the proxies, all of that stuff you have to deal with. The cloud makes that super simple. It's up there. Everybody can connect to it no matter where they are. And the third pattern that I've seen is organizations that need to collaborate across organizations. So you need to you're in a partnership with another company, you're a consultant, something like that. It's super easy to set something up in the cloud, start collaborating, and then, like in a consulting engagement, this is a really common pattern that we see. In fact, Sogeti is a great example of a consultant that heavily uses our cloud service. They will do a project for a customer or with a customer, and then be able to just hand it off in the cloud to that customer. When they're done, the customer can pick it up and run with it. So some super nice, flexible things that the cloud brings to your ALM solution. So I'm gonna step aside for a second and let one of our customers speak. Simon Mann, head of global software, is we're gonna have a video that shows what Dealogic is doing with Team Foundation Server.
It's a long way from the 6th floor to the 5th floor if you've got to walk around.
We provide a platform for investment banks.
I tend to always have a coffee cup in my hand at the top of the slide, so it definitely makes it more difficult coming down.
Some of the world's largest transactions are executed over our platform, such as the Facebook initial public offering.
We use Visual Studio for all of our development. We have 25 development teams working globally in 4 separate time zones.
The speed is of the essence here, speed and quality.
Communication at times can be difficult.
Mobile is core to what we do.
Our clients are looking for ways of analyzing the market that will give them an edge. In order to understand the requirements, you need to be connected with the business. There is a window of opportunity for these bonds to be released when the price is right. It can last as little as half an hour. By standing in front of the smart board, everyone just sees the burn chart, sees the tasks of all the people, and it's just so much fun just pulling over a task completed with your finger.
We recently did a 72-hour hackathon.
There was no requirement to use TFS, but the developers chose to use TFS and chose to use the cloud-based one. I certainly see in Dealogic Dealogic that we will migrate over to TF Service in the cloud.
TFS has changed the way that I view software development. The Kanban approach is astounding in the way that it helps a team manage its backlog.
The great thing about TFS is it works right out of the box. You have several templates you can choose from.
Also, it enables us to create our own custom workflows.
The other cool thing about the Kanban board is it's understandable by anybody.
A much more accurate view as to when this functionality is likely to go into production.
Everything is on the rise at the moment. Our backlog is full. We're expecting to continue to grow.
You've got to keep up the speed and come off properly to land on your feet. No breaks.
All right. All right, so I'm going to invite Simon to come out for a few minutes and chat with us about their experiences. Good to see you, Simon. So I'm interested in hearing in your words, like, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges as, you know, as a mission-critical software development team? What are some of your biggest challenges?
Well, one of our main goals is to be able to reduce the amount of time it takes from getting a request from a client and delivering it back done to that client. And and so delivering it back to the client. I've lost where I am. I'm very sorry. And in order to do that, we saw there we have 25 teams located globally, 4 different time zones, and so. Very sorry, everybody. So we're a global company. We're located in 4 different time zones, and we need to make sure that they're working on multiple products. Okay, so we've got many products these 25 teams are working on, and they're integrated into one single platform. Any request that comes in invariably does not just fit nicely into one product. It has to be worked on by multiple teams, and whenever you've got that, you've got to make sure that you can have those teams working in parallel. So back to our challenge, we need to deliver this quickly. If those teams can't work in parallel, then you've got a problem. One team takes it, they do their work, they pass it on to the next team, they do their work. Pass it on to the next team, they do their work.
And if it's not coordinated, like, it's never gonna come together as an end-to-end feature, right?
Absolutely, it just isn't. And so, yeah, we've got to make sure that they can work in parallel.
Makes sense. So when you sort of looked at TFS and adopted it, how do you see that helping you address this big problem that you have?
Yeah, okay, so what we've got, the transparency, the ownership, and the understanding at the feature level has been tough for us. And different teams have approached this in different ways. We've got Excel spreadsheets, we've got Visio diagrams, we've got dependency maps to try and manage these features. But none of them actually say, hey, look, gather around this. This is what you want to be delivering. This is what's adding value. And so from TFS 2013, what we want to see is a hierarchical Kanban board, or the portfolio management, I think you call it. And so we use Kanban extensively. Most of our teams use Kanban. And for an individual to be able to go to their board and then be able to go up one level and say, how am I contributing to the platform? Who else is working on this feature? Globally, it could be anyone in many different teams. Who else is working on this feature? Who do I need to talk to? Is it being worked on today? What do I need to do? And that level of transparency is just fantastic.
Makes a lot of sense. So I saw in the video that you guys mentioned using what's now Visual Studio Online was Team Foundation Service. And sort of, what do you see in kind of the future? What kind of role will that play in your work?
Yeah, so I think we expect everything to move to the cloud at Dealogic. But we, at the moment, so I expect we'll do that fairly progressively. We're not going to be too gung-ho about it. At the moment, we're using it for pet projects. We're using it for research and development. The hackathon, several teams used it there in order to manage their work, but they're fairly lightweight applications that we're using it for. In production, we've been more reticent. We want to make sure that some of our concerns are met, the work item template configuration, the reporting, make sure we can get the right reports out of it, the Active Directory support. Once those issues are gone, I can see us moving fairly quickly to the cloud, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, you set me up for some good stuff I'm going to talk about in a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So if in your organization you have the same need that we have to be able to iterate rapidly, make progress on large distributed teams, and deliver sort of business value on a rapid cadence, then you really have to think hard about how you approach software development. You're going to have to approach it a lot differently than you have in the past. It's going to affect sort of every aspect. In sort of this modern software development world, it's fundamentally about being able to iterate very rapidly from idea to implementation to release to customer feedback and back to idea. There's this whole notion of lean development, minimum viable product, sort of rapid iteration. And that really is, I think, I don't know that I follow any particular methodology precisely, but that concept of take small bits, deliver in small bits, learn from what your customers do, and build the next thing, I think is critical to the future of software development. So we're going to talk through a bit of how what we've done in 2013 is going to help you with that. So let's start with planning. So Agile software practices have become very popular over the last 10 years. Scrum, Kanban, various things. And people have proved them to work very, very well in sort of small feature teams. If you've got a team of 8, 10, 12 people, those kinds of practices work incredibly well. The thing people have really struggled with is, how do I now scale that up to a team of 1,000? And I've got 20, 30, 40 of these teams out there, each executing agilely and rapidly and driving forward. But if I've got 30 teams all going in different directions, then I've got nothing in the end. I haven't actually delivered any business value. I've got a mess. So the thing that we've been struggling with as an industry is, how do we sort of enable these empowered, rapid, innovative small teams, but at the same time harness that energy so that it's aligned with the overall business goals and delivering what we need. So that's been one of the core things that we've invested in 2013. And I'm going to invite Nicole to come out and start a demo for us.
Thank you, Brian. Great. So Brian highlighted there's often challenges with agility in the development process. Last year, we released a set of capabilities to help teams be more agile. But now we need to help scale agile across organizations. And I'm going to show you how. So I'm going to start off in my team homepage, and this is something you're probably all familiar with. It's a great place for me to plan, track, and represent my work. And what you can see here, I've got live tiles of information related to my project. You've got bugs, I've got information about builds, my backlog. I'm going to drill right into my product backlog. And here you can see a list of the items in my product backlog. I can easily add a new one. If I want to reprioritize my backlog, I can just easily drag and drop them right here. But I'm going to drill right into my current iteration. And you can see how I've taken those product backlog items and I've broken them down into individual tasks. I now have my team members assigned to do the work. And once I've got this plan in place, I'm ready to move forward with tracking the progress of my work on our task board. And task boards are really just a modern day implementation of Post-it notes on a whiteboard. It's very easy for me to track my team's work right here. I can drag and drop any of these items once we complete our work, and it's getting zeroed out in my backlog real time as I do this. And I can see in my burn down chart how we're progressing against the goals for this iteration. So this is a fantastic way for my team to be agile and track and manage our work. But as Brian said, there's often a really big challenge across an organization when you've got multiple projects and many different teams. And how does that work all accrue up to our overall business objectives? And how do I understand the status of that work? So I'm going to drill into now a leadership view of my dashboard. And here you see something new, which is a higher level unit of work called features. And really what features are business objectives. And you can rename these to a name that works better for your organization. You can add additional levels. But the key thing about this concept is it allows me to ensure that when I drill down into my backlog items, I can now see information in backlog items across multiple teams. And I can see, for example, that these product backlog items are working across multiple teams, like my web and devices team. I want to ensure those teams are working closely together, are collaborating to ensure that end-to-end customer experience that we're enabling meets that need. So now I can even go further and see additional levels of granularity, so I can really understand the work that's going on in my organization and if it's accruing to the business objectives that we're trying to achieve. Brian also highlighted, though, even though we want these portfolio views, we still want our teams to be autonomous and to be able to be agile in their development. So we have some additional capabilities to help you with this at your individual team level. So I'm going to go right into my Kanban board, and this is how the device team likes to track our work. Other teams in the organization like to use Scrum. It doesn't matter. It all rolls up to that enterprise agile view that I showed you previously. I also have some specific requirements for the devices team. For example, I have to physically test my application on devices before I can actually move out of development. So for example, I may want to put in a new column here called device tested. And I was able to add this column to my Kanban board without contacting a TFS administrator. I didn't have to change my organizational processes. I can just do work the way my team wants to here without overall impacting the organization. The same way I can also, other ways I can help my team be more autonomous is through work item tags. And work item tags are just metadata that I can tie to any one of my backlog items. And here I'm using device types that I'm applying to each of my work items. I may want to add an additional one here. Maybe this one is also associated to iPhone. I can even create a new one right here. And then I can go in and filter and look at just the work items maybe associated with Windows Phone. I can easily get the views I need to be able to manage my work more effectively within my team and maintain that autonomy. Finally, I want to be able to have better control of my work. I want to be able to report out how the team is doing in more graphically compelling ways. So now we support the ability to do charts and diagrams on any of your queries. So I'm going to drill into my work item query, and I have a favorite here for all tasks. This is just one query that I ran, and I can go in and show you some charts that I made. Really easy to create, tasks by users. I can see task state by user. Looks like Brian has the most outstanding to-dos. Got to get him working on those. In addition, I can even see pivot tables. I love to visualize them. I'm a marketing person, so we can just easily create these charts, share them with others, make sure everyone knows how the team is progressing on our work.
Great, thank you, Nicole. So what Nicole demonstrated is that we've got capabilities that allow your individual feature teams to execute the way they like and iteratively and agilely, and yet roll that up so that you get an overall enterprise view and are able to align that work with your business priorities. So let's move on to sort of the next area I want to talk about, which is if you're going to execute this process quickly, you've got to make sure you're building the software right too. And one of the, as we've gone through this transition from a team that shipped every year or two to a team that now ships every 3 weeks, one of the biggest challenges that we've had to deal with is what we call debt, technical debt, various forms of debt that build up over time. And in the old model, you would build up debt, and then you'd have weeks or months to then burn down that debt, go back and fix the bugs, go back and finish the things that weren't quite finished. And in a world where you're kind of shipping constantly, you can't do that. You can't build up debt. So you need to avoid ever accruing that debt in the first place. And that significantly changes the way you're going to do your development. So some of the things that are reasons for accruing debt are, one, not doing it right in the first place. So rework is a huge cause of debt, and that can often be caused by your developers not collaborating well together, not knowing what each other are doing, not knowing that the change over there that person is making is going to affect the change that you're making, not having the context as you're making your changes to make sure you're doing them right. And then, the other one, if anyone follows the news much, and we didn't actually ask them to do this, but if you follow the news much, you'll notice that sort of large sites that are critical, mission critical, and you want to have a lot of people at, you probably don't want to put load testing off until the very end. So, we've moved to a model where load testing is just a normal part of the development process, literally every day, constant. Doing load testing, and our cloud load service helps there a lot. So I'm going to hand it back over to Nicole, and she's going to walk us through some of our new capabilities there.
Great. As Brian said, eliminating technical debt is often about avoiding it from the beginning. And one way to avoid technical debt from the beginning is to ensure that there's better communications across your team, that your team is collaborating effectively, and that those problems don't occur that he highlighted, not doing it wrong the first time. So now I'm going into a new capability that we have in Visual Studio 2013 called Team Rooms. Team Rooms is this collaboration environment, and I can collaborate real time right here. So for example, I may want to say something to Brian. For those of you who were at launch last year, you might remember that there was a lot of noise about what he was wearing. So I could talk to him about that right here. But in addition, what I really love about Team Rooms is that it's a durable record of everything going on in my project. So I'm getting rich TFS events right here. You can see information related to changes to bugs, changes to code. I can get updates related to builds. I can see that Brian wants me to do a code review right here. I could click on this, go right into Visual Studio, review the code, and then respond back to Brian with my feedback. What I also like about Team Rooms is that it provides me to go back in time. Yesterday, I was on a plane on my way to New York. I didn't know what was going on with my project team. I could just come here, see if they were working on a bug fix, if they had deployed a new feature. All that information will be right here for me within Team Rooms. So you can see how Team Rooms are a great place for me to collaborate effectively with my team. But I'm a developer. I'm spending all my time in Visual Studio IDE, so I need tools to help me be able to be more productive and collaborate there more effectively right within a coding environment. So I'm going to go right into Visual Studio now, and I'm going to show you a new capability that we have, which is called Code Lens. And Code Lens is really just a heads-up display for your code. So right above each method, you're going to see some contextually relevant information. So for example, if I want to see where this method is referenced in other parts of my solution, I can just click here. I don't have to open another window. I don't have to navigate around through all the different references. I get that view right here. You can be excited about it. Next, another indicator I have right here is unit tests. I can see what unit tests were run on this method, and I can see one of them actually failed. I may want to make a change to my method right here and just rerun that unit test to see if I fixed it once I made some changes. I can also see who has collaborated or edited this code. I can see the original author. I can see who's made the latest changes. I can drill in right here to see the changes that Brian Keller has made to our code. So you can see how Code Lens helps me be really much more productive in the zone and collaborate more effectively with my team. Next, though, we can continue to support collaboration effectively with teams with the new support for distributed version control, specifically Git in 2013. So I'm going to go into another project where I'm storing my source code in Git. And one of the things that Git is well known for is being able to work offline. So yesterday, as I was preparing for this demo, I was imagining this vision of being at the beach versus in snowy New York. But if I was, I would go ahead and maybe make a comment to my file. And I could go ahead and save these changes or commit these changes right to my local Git repo. Go ahead and make that commit. I can do additional commits offline. I can continue to work on my project. And then when I'm back in the office on Monday, I'll want to go ahead and sync my changes right onto the Team Foundation server. And then all of these changes will link back to those work items and tasks that I highlighted previously in our demo around Agile planning. So I'm able to show you here is how we're able to take advantage of that flexibility of distributed version control with now our support for Git, but at the same time I'm able to integrate it with the workflows and the end-to-end traceability that you've come to expect from Team Foundation Server. So finally, I'm finished, writing my code. I'm ready to deploy it. But first, I want to make sure that it will scale to the tens of thousands of users that are likely to utilize this application. It's very important, as Brian already mentioned, that you scale test your applications early and often in the development process, whether you're a startup or the federal government. So Visual Studio today supports web and load tests on-premise, but what we hear from teams is they often don't have access to test rigs to be able to simulate that traffic, or it's just really difficult to set up those environments, maintain those environments. It's often quite complex and expensive. So now we can highlight this is a really great scenario for the cloud, and Visual Studio Online now enables you to do load testing in the cloud. So I'm going to go right into Visual Studio, and here I've got a load test that I already set up. What you can see here is the only thing different about this load test is what infrastructure I use. I can decide if I want to do it on-premise or in the cloud, Team Foundation Service, which is now a Visual Studio Online. What will happen is I'll go ahead and I would run this load test, and the test would save up to Visual Studio Online. And then what you would see, it would start to simulate all those different users, the traffic of the tens of thousands of customers that I expect to hit my application. And it's all possible because it's built on top of Azure, so it can scale to whatever number of resources I have. And what's great about our load testing, it can support on-premise or cloud-based applications. Just because of time, I'm just going to go ahead and show you what happens at the end of one of my load tests. What you're going to see is that I can see how my application is scaling over time based on the load that I put on it. What I can see based on this output is that the response times are meeting our requirements, and this application is ready to go into production.
Beautiful. So, you know, I don't know how many of you know Dave Cutler. Dave Cutler's kind of the father of Windows NT. And I remember a story that I heard about Dave. Dave's a ex-Marine, very gruff kind of guy. And I remember some dev on his team years ago came to him and was complaining about how much time he was having to spend fixing bugs. And Dave just looked at him and said, "Don't put it in, ain't got to take it out." So, you know, it's all about getting it right the first time. And, you know, we've done a bunch of stuff in the product this time to help you get it right the first time. All right. So let's talk about, all right, so we've done some planning, we've done some development, and now I got to get that stuff into production and get it into users' hands. And that is probably one of the most wasteful and inefficient processes in sort of software development today. I've heard stories of people taking, 6 months from the time that the team said the app was ready to get it sort of signed off and provisioned and deployed, and all of the stuff that has to happen is tremendous. And if you're going to execute on these rapid cycles, whether your cycle is 3 weeks or a month or 2 months, people have varying cycles, but if you're going to execute on anything on that kind of frequency, you've got to have a very reliable, repeatable, and automated process to bring those changes out of the developer's desktop and into production in a way that obviously keeps your site alive and productive and happy, and your users happy. So I'm going to turn it over to Nicole again, and she's going to walk us through. Oops, no, you're right, I forgot. I'm going to make an announcement first. Announcing. She looks at me and goes, "No, you're not." So today, we are releasing a set of capabilities we call Release Management for Visual Studio. You may recall back in June that we acquired a product called InRelease. We've spent the last several months sort of integrating that and turning it into sort of an official Microsoft feature / capability. It's now an integrated part of Visual Studio and Team Foundation Server. It's available today for download, so if you're an MSDN subscriber, you can go to the download site and get it today. It's also on the Microsoft download site for trial if you want to just check it out. It's a great tool, and now Nicole is going to demo it for you.
The moment you've all been waiting for. All right, so as Brian highlighted, making sure that you have a way to handle the releases is a quite critical part in the development lifecycle. So here I am now in the authoring tool for our new release management capabilities in Visual Studio 2013. And it's very easy for me to go in here and define how I want to release my applications in each one of my environments. I've got this really great user interface that allows me to deal with complex scenarios for deploying in each one of my environments in an automated way. So you can see I've set up development, QA, and production environments for how I want to deploy my releases into each one of them. And I've worked very closely with my operations teams to ensure that once we do this handoff, these applications are ready to go into production so we don't have any kind of slowdowns there. A next key element of an enterprise-grade release management solution is ensuring that all stakeholders have visibility into the release pipeline and they know when releases have become available. In addition to, there's an approval process in place so that folks with authority can approve those releases before they go into each environment. So what you can see is for my 3 environments, I've set up notifications for when releases become available. In addition, I've identified who is the appropriate approval to determine that a release is ready to go into that environment. So speaking about approvals, I just ran that load test, and I want to go ahead and approve releasing that application into production. So I'm going to come in here and just say, load test passed. I'm going to approve it. And now this is going to hand off to our operations team so they can deploy that application into production.
Thank you, Nicole. All right, so just to bring this back home for me, I run a service. We run a service now called Visual Studio Online, and we release every 3 weeks. In order to do that, we have 3 different environments that we manage. Different people manage them differently. We have what's called an int environment, and that's sort of where all the check-ins go, pretty much daily. Go into the int environment, do the integration testing, make sure everything is working. We've then got a pre-production environment, which is where at the end of the sprint, everything goes to kind of put it in a production pristine environment and make sure everything is good, do our final validation, and then we've got a production environment. And without sort of some tools like this and automated deployment capabilities and configuration management capabilities, the ability to accomplish that flow from dev desktop into integration, into pre-prod and into production, every 3 weeks, we could never do. So these kind of capabilities are absolutely critical to managing rapid cadence. So, lastly, I want to talk a bit about sort of what we call monitor and learn. So, again, running a service, there's what's called live site culture. Like you live by live site. If there's something wrong with that site, it's got all your attention. If you're watching it regularly, you're learning what people are doing, you're watching your adoption funnel, you're learning what features people like. You have to be very, very focused on what's happening in your production environment. And that is an incredible part of this cycle, because from that observation that you do, it helps you understand how to prioritize your backlog. There's no point spending a bunch of time investing in a feature that nobody's using, right? So, or you make a change that you think is the right change, and suddenly you start losing users. Your attrition rate starts going up. Well, you want to know that. Like, that was a bad change. I need to back that change out. These are incredibly important things to be watching. So, my next announcement. We have a new capability that we call Application Insights for Visual Studio Online. It's a new feature of Visual Studio Online that does exactly this. It enables you to watch your applications in production. You can see the reliability, you can see the performance, and you can see usage. You can understand what people are doing with your application, how they're using it, and the patterns. And from that, you can learn a tremendous amount about your application and help build a better application. Now, this service is in limited preview right now. So, like we sort of went through with originally TF Preview, and then Team Foundation Service, and then Visual Studio Online. We went through a progression. This service is in limited preview. It's very early, so we're practicing what we preach. This is build, measure, learn. We're going to put out a service now that we think is useful, but it's way not done. We want people to try it out, give us feedback, and we will evolve it. The process for getting access is what we call an invitation code. So if you go get a Visual Studio Online account, on your homepage there'll be a nice tile that says Try Application Analytics, or sorry, Application Insights. And from there you'll be able to request an invitation code, and we'll be sort of fulfilling those as quickly as we can. So I encourage you to try it out. But to sort of whet your taste for it, Nicole's going to do a demo to show you what's there.
Thanks, Brian. As Brian highlighted, there's often challenges with running an application in production. And so we want to show you how we can help you understand if your application is available, if it's performing, and how you can use information to help prioritize continuous innovation of your application. And here's that tile that Brian just highlighted with Application Insights. And Application Insights is much more than just a monitoring analytics solution because it ties that data into your overall application cycle. So I'm going to click in here so you can see. I'm going to do a quick refresh. It is a limited preview, so I may have to make a quick change here. See if we can get this back up and running. Oops. Now I really made hit the wrong backup. All right, I'm going to maybe see if I can go to a different tab here. What did you say? You have access either, so yeah, so we're all in the same place. All right, let's hope we can get this back up and running. So I'm going to just click here. All right, so we may not be able to get this view here. I'm going to try. What I will highlight here, you can see it at a very high level, and we'll see if we can figure it out in the back in the last minute or two. What you get in this kind of dashboard view is my 360-degree view of information. So here you're starting to get some metrics tied to availability, performance, and usage data. And I can look at this data across my production, development, and QA environments. I'm able to drill into this data to get much more information about the availability of that application, drill down into the actual tests that we're running to identify if there were issues with that application. In addition to areas like performance, I can drill into actually the code that may be causing the bottlenecks that are going on with my application. And finally, of course, we provide out-of-the-box usage analytics that allow you to really understand how our customers are using our capabilities, what environments they're coming. But as Brian mentioned, you can also instrument your application to ensure that you understand the features your customers are using and how they're using them to prioritize investments as you go forward. Now I'm going to try one more click to see if it works. And if it doesn't, then I think I'm going to hand back to Brian. Okay, I think I'm going to hand back to you, Brian. Thankfully, he set this up. This is a limited preview.
Well, I guess it doesn't matter how many times you practice. We've been practicing this for, what, 2 days?
Yep.
And it's been working, and you go live, and oh well.
All right.
So I want to spend a few minutes talking about, as I said, I live, thank you, Nicole. Thank you. I live by this, and my team lives by this. We have a dashboard for Team Foundation Service, or for Visual Studio Online. It's going to take me a while to get used to saying that. For Visual Studio Online, it covers things like adoption. I see how many new accounts are getting created each day. I can correlate that to marketing events that we do, to changes that we've made to the service, announcements that we make. So I'll be backstage after this, looking to see what's happening with our service. We use it for production diagnostics, and when performance problems happen, when crashes happen, we're able to, as Nicole said, drill directly into the code. You can drill through to IntelliTrace. You get stack traces. You get very, very rich information to help you understand what's going on, and linkage to Visual Studio. So.
Issue, so I don't know if you want me to show it.
Come try it. I would love to show the demo. So
it was a network issue. So okay, nothing to do with our limited preview. I'm back. Okay, so you'll hear probably some of my pitch more than once. All right. So I'm going to go into Application Insights, and what you're going to see now is a dashboard of the data from. Yay, it's coming! From my visitors app that we saw earlier in the presentation. And so here, as I mentioned, you get this 360-degree view of your application. It's available if it's performing, and information about usage. But I'm going to drill right into availability because it looks like we have a problem with our production environment with regards to availability. And here within the availability dashboard, you get an end-to-end view of what's going on with the availability of my application. What you're going to see here is that the data comes from Microsoft data centers from around the world, and in each one of these different charts, you're going to have information based on those test results that we're running. And also you see these blue dots here? These actually are deployments. So that's the deployment that I just did. This helps me see that, you know what, that application is available, it's performing great. But it looks like a couple days ago, I did have a problem once I did a deployment, and so I want to drill into what was going on here. After the deployment, my response time started to go up, and clearly my availability was suffering, and my tests started to fail. I want to drill into what was going on here. I can go and see all the individual tests that were run through this like scatter plot view. I can see the ones that were passing and the ones that failed. And what's great about these tests is that these are the tests that I used in development. I'm reusing these artifacts in a dev test environment to identify issues in production. I'm going to click onto one of these and get more detailed test results. And what's the great thing I can do here is I can go right into Visual Studio and get that detailed web test result output to further diagnose and understand what's going on with my application. So what I've been able to highlight to you here is how I was able to quickly identify that I had an application that was not available. I then was able to correlate it to a deployment that I had made. I was able then to drill into the test results to figure out what was that problem. I was able to ultimately diagnose and solve the problem, get an application back into production before even getting a call from a customer. So next, I want to ensure that not only is my application available, is that it's performing smoothly. So now I'm going to go into my QA environment where I manage the overall performance of my application, because I want to ensure that it performs well before I put it into production. So now I've got a nice full end-to-end view of the performance of my application right here. And this allows me to kind of identify if I have any bottlenecks. So for example, I'm seeing most of my requests are running really fast. They're all less than 50 milliseconds. There are some, though, that are taking a little bit longer. I may want to understand what those requests are because they may be really critical to my customer experience. I can also understand with this view is how my application is scaling as I put more load on it. Here you can see, I just ran that load test. Request rates went up a little bit, but response times didn't. This application was ready to go into production. But previously in the week, I did have some spikes in performance, and so I really want to drill down to what was going on here. So now what I'm going to see with this section is I'm going to see increased information like what were the dependencies that it could be impacting my application's performance. Is it actually my code, or is it a dependency that's causing these slowdowns? I also can see the top 10 requests that are the top 10 slowest requests. I want to drill into one of these requests to really understand what is causing my performance bottlenecks. Here I can get even more rich information about what's going on with my application. And this one is going to show me right now. Great. So now what is so cool is that I've got the ability to download an IntelliTrace log to further diagnose and debug this application. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this IntelliTrace log. And what you're going to see here is I have the opportunity to click directly into the specific code that's causing that performance issue. So now you're really seeing the power of bringing together rich analytics and insights with the overall application development process. So finally, I want to get a complete end-to-end view of my application. So I want to see how users are taking advantage of it, what features they're using, what environments they're working in. So of course, right out of the box, we provide you with a kind of standard user analytics. So I'm going to go right into our users view. And you can see, standard metrics that you would expect to see, active users, information about sessions, unique users, new versus returning users. You can get all this information right at your fingertips. I can also understand where my customers are coming from. I'm going to go into my production environment because this is not running in QA. And so here I can see what operating systems they're running, what devices, what browsers, where geographically they're located. This is all available to me. But then I can further instrument my application to get even richer information. What features are they using? How are they using? I can use this kind of information to prioritize what features I invest in going forward.
Awesome.
Okay. Now I'm ready.
Thank you again, Nicole. So, a couple of things I wanted to add to that is, one, we're delivering this as a cloud service as part of VS Online, but it works for cloud or on-premises applications. It'll work wherever you run your applications. And there are so many things in there we use on a daily basis. One of them that she showed, and I don't know if it came through as well as it resonates with me, but one of my favorite features is the stack chart of dependencies. Because if you're like me, you build a service that has a lot of dependencies, whether it's SQL databases or it's billing systems or it's whatever. I think we have probably 10 different services that we rely on for VS Online to always be up. And of course, we never have any problems. Our code always works. But those other services, they always have issues. And that stack chart that she showed you provides a really easy way to correlate the end user behavior you're seeing on your site with the performance and reliability of the services that you're consuming. So you can real quickly look, okay, we're having problems. Is it my problem, or is it one of the things I depend on? And let me get the right people engaged to sort it out quickly. So it's very, very cool. And so we've now spent a little while talking about things that we've done in 2013. Another very, very important part of the story is our partners. We have a very rich partner ecosystem helping us bring all of these capabilities to market and make sure that you're able to adopt them. So just a few examples I wanted to call out. Data integration. Look, every system, everybody has a lot of different systems in use, and figuring out how to integrate the data between them is important. We've got a great partner called OpsHub, is one of a number of partners that we have, but they're one I'm going to call out, that is very focused on data integration scenarios in terms of being able to synchronize and import and export data to and from TFS. We also, testing is obviously incredibly important. We provide a bunch of testing tools, but we've got an incredibly important partner in Perfecto Mobile. And FrogLogic, so two very important partners that provide device testing that can then integrate with TFS and make sure that you get a full view of all of your entire application, regardless of what platform it's on. And then sort of the last category I wanted to talk about is formal requirements management. For many organizations, that's a very important thing. We've got a partner called eDevTech that creates a product called Integrate, which is a really nice formal requirements management system. And I wanted to announce that they're going to do, they've just released a new product about 2 weeks ago called Smart Office for TFS, which is sort of a lighter weight version of their formal requirements system for people who just need to be able to take all that work that the development team is managing in TFS and sort of manifest it as Word documents, Visio diagrams that stakeholders can consume, be able to easily read and understand what the requirements are and are you delivering what I want, and then have linkage between those artifacts and the underlying work actually being done and tracked in TFS. So they're going to be providing a special discount for MSDN subscribers. It's a 40% discount for people who want to try out these tools. We're very excited about that. So done a lot. That sort of wraps up what I want to talk about for 2013, but I want to take a minute looking at the road ahead. So we've done a lot in 2013, but we've got a lot left to do. And I just want to give you a little bit of a picture. So I've sort of highlighted 3 sort of major areas of investment that we're going to be focusing on over the next year. One is what we call the enterprise service platform. So Simon talked about they use Team Foundation Server on premises. They've started to use the cloud for some of their lightweight projects, and he pointed out a few examples of things that they really would like to have in the cloud before they could move their sort of core production development to the cloud. Things like Active Directory integration, process template customization, richer reporting capabilities in the cloud. Another one, which I'm not sure is an issue for them, but I hear from a bunch of customers, is sort of data sovereignty issues. There are certain regions of the world that would really like to have the data hosted on their soil. So these are kind of a set of investments that we're going to be focused on, is making sure that our cloud solution is something that can be adopted broadly, even by the largest enterprises. Next is we're going to continue to build on the enterprise agile capabilities that Nicole showed you to be able to get more transparency and better alignment, and to extend it to include more of your quality processes, so you can integrate your testing and your application quality information into your planning, and ultimately your release capabilities as well. So integrate our release management so I can track all the way from planning through the development cycle into production and get a full end-to-end view of what's happening across my enterprise. And then thirdly, the application insight stuff that we talked about, as I said, it's an early preview, and that's something we're going to be iterating on very rapidly and increasing all of the scenarios that you can do with it. So we're very excited. I think it's going to be a bright year, and looking forward to continuing to work with you all. So that's sort of it. I want to thank you all for listening to me, and I'm going to hand it back over to Soma to wrap us up.
Wow, there was a lot of stuff that both Brian and Nicole got a chance to talk to you and show you. And I'm actually glad that the demo gods finally smiled for us to be able to show the application insight service here live. We are very excited about what we are doing with Visual Studio Online Application Insights. And like Brian sort of reiterated a couple of different times, it's just the beginning, and there's more to come in the months ahead and in the years ahead kind of thing. So far, we've been here for a little over a couple hours now, and I know we are running late, so thanks for being patient with us. But so far, for the most part, you heard from me and the Microsoft people. I always say that, hey, Visual Studio is only as great as what you do with Visual Studio, as the kinds of applications and experiences that you build on Visual Studio, and that's what makes Visual Studio comes to life, right? So I thought it'll be good to, before we wrap up, to hear from one of our customers. In this case, it's a, am I getting the slide correct? Yeah, in this case, it is a Toyota Racing Development. They are a wholly owned subsidiary of Toyota, and they are in the business of racing cars and how they can be highly competitive. And before I talk about what they are doing with Visual Studio and Team Foundation Server, let's roll a video from them, please.
TRD's been in the racing business for over 30 years. Development's in the title of our company, and that's really what we're all about. Continuous development, continuous improvement.
The NASCAR environment is extremely competitive. What we as Toyota try and do is help enable our teams to be more competitive.
Practice day is everything. I mean, if you don't practice well, you're going to run bad on race day. Feedback is the key word. If I don't come in that garage area and I don't give my crew chief the proper feedback, we're going to go slow.
What we're trying to do to help communication during the practice session is leverage technology.
If I go into turn one and I go straight to the bottom, it's really good. All right, bud, bring it to me here. Okay, coming in. That's what I like. Out of everything you give me so far, that's what I like.
I come off that racetrack running 200 miles an hour. My heart's pounding, the motor's loud, the other cars are running, and I have to have my thoughts gathered up. But yet there's all this loud noise all around me, it's just this complete chaos. So when the Trackside app comes in from my crew chief, and I can have my moment, my space, where nobody's hollering at me, and I can push in what I want to say and hand it back to him, it makes it for a very peaceful communication to where I can remain calm. It makes me calmer, it makes the crew chief calmer, makes the team calmer, make better decisions.
It's very infrequent that software can drive a win or drive performance. This is one of those areas.
These races are 1/10 of a second. So at times, comparing those to my competitors and showing the racetrack and showing where I'm having problems, I got something. I got an advantage.
I thought I have a cool job, building and delivering Visual Studio, but these guys are doing something really cool here. I did get a chance to talk to Philip Bland, who runs the sort of technology group for Toyota Racing Development last night. And I was asking him, hey, you guys are using Visual Studio, you guys are using Team Foundation Server. Tell me what do you like the best about it and what do you get out of it, right? And in a world of racing where every millisecond matters, I was hoping that the answer is going to be hey, performance or scale or this or that kind of thing. And I was frankly surprised at his response. His response was collaboration. And the reason he sort of picked that as the main reason that he's excited about Visual Studio and Team Foundation Server is because he says hey, I've got a fantastic set of software development engineers in my organization. They're, of course, geographically distributed. I want to give them a set of tools that enable them to work together in a collaborative environment so that they can do their best. And if I can give them the right set of tools, automatically I know I'll get the best performance for my application and for what my drivers need to do kind of thing, right? So that was just great to hear from him on that. I don't know if I'm going to put him in a spot here or not, but he did share with me a little bit about what they are planning on doing in the next year kind of thing. For obvious reasons, I don't want to go into a lot of details other than to say that these guys are seriously thinking about Windows Azure, Visual Studio Online, and Visual Studio 2013 to build their next generation tracking site application. And that's well underway. And sometime in the future, whenever they're ready, they'll talk to you about it. But it was exciting to see what they are doing with Visual Studio and Team Foundation Server and moving forward with Visual Studio Online. So I want to summarize. It's been like about 2.5 hours that we started talking here. And there are a lot of new things we talked about, a lot of demos that you saw, a lot of new capabilities in our products. But if I want to leave you all with just 2 messages that I wanted to take with you at the end of the session, these are the 2 messages. Number 1, between Visual Studio, MSDN, and Windows Azure, we got the best development platform and development tools for you to be able to build applications for the cloud and get going on the cloud. So that's sort of one message. The second message, between Visual Studio and Visual Studio Online, we are delivering an end-to-end set of tools and capabilities, a set of client-side tools, and a set of developer services on the cloud that together enable you to build modern applications in an agile way and deal with application delivery in an agile way in a world of devices and services. And with Visual Studio Online, we are absolutely getting into a new era for Visual Studio and taking the next big step forward. So those are the 2 messages that I want to leave you with, if there are only 2 things that you want to take away from all of this. In closing, there is a couple call to action items I have. One is, for those of you who are already using Visual Studio 2013, thank you and thank you. And if you haven't had a chance to pick up Visual Studio 2013 and play around with it, I would encourage you to do that. It's available today. Go get your hands on that, download it, and give it a try and see what it can do for you. Likewise, Visual Studio Online is available now. You can go sign up. Like I said before, there is a friction-free way for you to get started with Visual Studio Online. Go sign up for an account, go try it, and let us know what it does for you. Because we are all eagerly looking forward to what you're going to be doing with Visual Studio 2013 and Visual Studio Online moving forward. We've got a great rest of the day planned for you. There are over 80, 90 technical sessions that we planned for the rest of the day. Hope you all have a great time here and enjoy the show. And thank you again very much. Bye.